Hello, friends. Welcome to the Sleep Aliens. Did you know that nearly 80% of those who watch my videos aren't subscribed? If you enjoy the content, I'd truly appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. It helps a lot. Also, don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. By the way, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. Have you ever noticed something that just stops your brain in its tracks? Like, it can't process what your eyes are showing it? That's exactly what occurred to me drive Highway 50 in Colorado one evening. They call Highway 50 the loneliest road in America. And after what I experienced that evening, I know why nobody wants to drive this road after dark. My name's Jackson Roen, and I've been hauling across country for 15 years. Every bit of highway between Seattle and Miami. Storms. I've driven through blizzard conditions, dust devils, and fog thick enough to hide your own hood ornament from sight. Nothing, however, could have prepared me for what went down on that October night in 2019. I hadn't been driving alone, thank God. I had my girlfriend Mary Callow with me. She had taken a week's leave from her nursing job to accompany me on the cross-country drive. This is our first road drive together. She had been talking about how nice it would be to just have the road to ourselves. If only she knew what we were about to experience. We left Grand Junction around 8 p.m., heading east toward Gunnison. The sun had already dropped behind the Rockies, painting the sky in shades of purple and orange before fading to black. Mary was in the passenger seat, scrolling through her phone, trying to find a decent radio station. Out here, you're lucky if you get static. Jackson, there's literally nothing, she said, tossing her phone into the cup holder. No signal, no stations. How do you do this all the time? I smiled. You get used to the quiet. Besides, gives you time to think. Think about what? Everything, nothing, whatever comes to mind. She laughed and leaned back in her seat, pulling her jacket tighter. Even in October, the Colorado high desert gets cold at night. The heater was running full blast, but you could still feel that dry, biting chill seeping through the windows. We were about 40 miles outside of Gunnison when I first noticed it. At first, I thought it was a power line. You know how sometimes power lines catch the light weird, especially at night? But we were in the middle of nowhere. No towns, no houses, nothing but sagebrush and darkness stretching for miles. There shouldn't have been any power lines out here. The white line was suspended in the air, maybe 30 feet off the ground, running parallel to the highway. It was perfectly straight, glowing with this soft white light that didn't flicker or pulse. It just was. Mary, I said quietly, not taking my eyes off the road. Look out your window. Tell me what you see. She sat up and pressed her face against the glass. What am I looking at? That line, in the air, you see it? There was a long pause, then, holy shit, what is that? I don't know. The line stayed with us for about 2 miles, never moving, never changing. It was like someone had drawn a perfectly straight chalk mark across the night sky and forgotten to erase it. I kept glancing at it, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Maybe it was a searchlight from somewhere, but there was no source, no beam shooting up from the ground. The line just existed on its own, hanging there like it had every right to be. Should we stop? Mary asked. Her voice had that tight quality to it, the one people get when they're trying not to panic. No, I said, we keep moving. But Jackson, we keep moving. I don't know why I said that. Instinct, maybe. Every fiber of my being was screaming at me to put distance between us and whatever that thing was. Stopping felt like the worst possible idea. Then the line disappeared. 1 second it was there, the next it was gone. Not fading, not moving away, just gone, like someone had flipped a switch. Mary gasped beside me. and I felt my hands tighten on the steering wheel. "Where did it go?" she whispered. "I don't." That's when the headlights stopped working. Not died, stopped working. The bulbs were still on. I could see the faint glow reflecting off the hood, but they weren't illuminating anything. The beams just ended a few feet in front of the truck, like they were hitting an invisible wall. We were driving blind through pitch darkness, and I couldn't see a damn thing. "Jackson!" Miri screamed. I hit the brakes and the truck shuddered to a stop. My heart was hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. For maybe 10 seconds we sat there in complete darkness, neither of us saying a word. Then, slowly, the headlights started working again. The beams stretched out across the highway, normal as ever, showing us empty asphalt and sagebrush. "What the hell just happened?" Miri's voice was shaking. "I don't know." "Jackson, we need to get out of here. We're going right now." I put the truck in gear and started driving. Fast. Faster than I should have been going on an unfamiliar road at night, but I didn't care. I just wanted to put miles between us and whatever we'd just seen. Miri pulled out her phone. "I'm checking the GPS. There's no signal out here. I downloaded an offline map before we left. Just let me check." I heard her tapping at her screen, then a long, confused silence. "Jackson? What?" "The GPS says we're still 40 miles outside of Gunnison." "Yeah, that sounds about right." "No, you don't understand. It says we're in the exact same spot we were 10 minutes ago, like we haven't moved at all." I glanced at the odometer. We'd definitely been driving. The miles were ticking up like normal. "Check it again, maybe it's glitching." She refreshed the app, once, twice, 3 times. "It keeps resetting. Every time I refresh, it puts us back in the same location, like we're stuck." "That's not possible." "I'm telling you what it says." "Miri, calm down. Don't tell me to calm down. We just saw something in the sky, our headlights stopped working, and now the GPS thinks we're going in circles." She was right. I knew she was right. But admitting it meant acknowledging that something deeply wrong was happening, and I wasn't ready to do that yet. We drove in silence for another 20 minutes. Miri kept checking her phone, getting more frustrated each time. I kept my eyes on the road, watching for, I don't know what, another line, something worse. Then I saw the sign, Gunnison, 38 miles. 40 miles outside of Gunnison. That's where we'd been when we saw the white line, and according to this sign, that's exactly where we still were. "Miri, I see it. We've been driving for half an hour. We should be closer by now." "I know." "So why does the sign say we're still—" "I don't know, Jackson. I don't know." I wanted to stop. I wanted to pull over, get out, and try to make sense of what was happening. But that same instinct from before was still screaming at me. Keep moving. Don't stop. Whatever you do, don't stop. So I kept driving. The temperature inside the truck had dropped. Not gradually, suddenly. One moment we were comfortable, the next we could see our breath fogging in the air. Miri wrapped her arms around herself, shivering. "Why is it so cold?" "Heaters on full blast. It shouldn't be." That's when I saw it again. The white line. But this time it wasn't off to the side. It was directly ahead of us, stretched across the highway like a barrier. And it was getting closer. "Jackson, what is that?" "I don't—" The line started moving. Not side to side, but forward and backward, like it was breathing, pulsing. I don't have words for what it was doing. It was wrong. Fundamentally, impossibly wrong. "Turn around." Miri grabbed my arm. "Jackson, turn the truck around." I wanted to. God, I wanted to. but I couldn't take my eyes off that line. It was growing brighter, wider, and I realized with growing horror that it wasn't just a line anymore. It was an opening, a tear in the darkness, and behind it, something else. Not sky, not space, something that hurt to look at. "Jackson!" My foot slammed on the gas. The truck roared forward and Miri screamed and the line filled my entire field of vision. Then we were through it, just like that. One moment it was there, the next we were past it. And when I checked the rearview mirror, there was nothing behind us but empty highway. Miri was crying. Quiet, shocked tears streaming down her face. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely keep them on the wheel. "Are you okay?" I asked. My voice didn't sound like mine. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. We drove for another hour in complete silence. The GPS started working normally again. The signs started making sense. Everything went back to normal, like nothing had happened at all. But something had happened. We both knew it. We didn't talk about it that night, or the next day, or the day after that. It wasn't until we were almost home, somewhere in Kansas, that Miri finally broke the silence. "We saw something, didn't we?" "Yeah. What do you think it was?" I didn't answer, because the truth was, I had no idea, and that scared me more than anything. But that wasn't the end of it. Not by a long shot. 3 weeks later, I got a call from another trucker I knew, guy named Dale Morrison. He drove the same routes I did, and we'd grab coffee whenever our schedules lined up. "Jackson, you ever drive Highway 50 at night, out near Gunnison?" My blood went cold. "Why?" "Because I saw something out there last week. Something I can't explain. Thought I was losing my mind until I talked to a couple other drivers. Turns out I'm not the only one." "What did you see?" "A white line, hanging in the air, and then other stuff, weird stuff." I closed my eyes. "Dale, I need you to tell me everything." And he did. Turns out, what Miri and I experienced wasn't unique. Over the past 6 months, at least a dozen truckers had reported similar incidents on that stretch of highway. White lines suspended in the air. Headlights that stopped working. GPS systems going haywire. Some reported missing time, leaving one location and arriving at their destination hours later than they should have, with no memory of the drive in between. But here's the thing that really got me. None of them reported it to the authorities. Not one. When I asked Dale why, he said something that chilled me to my core. "Because when you see something like that, Jackson, you just know that whatever it is, it's not something the cops can help with. And you know that if you tell people, they'll think you're crazy. So you keep your mouth shut, and you hope it doesn't happen again." He was right. I knew he was right because I'd felt the exact same way. Miri and I finally talked about it that night. Really talked about it. She'd been doing research, reading reports from people who'd experienced similar phenomena. UFO sightings in the San Luis Valley. Strange lights over the Uncompahgre Plateau. Stories going back decades about things in the Colorado high desert that couldn't be explained. "Do you think it was a UFO?" she asked. "I don't know what it was, but it wasn't normal. It wasn't natural." "So, what do? Nothing. We don't do anything. We keep our heads down, and we don't drive that highway again." "Jackson, Miri, please, I don't want to think about it anymore. I just want to forget it ever happened." But you can't forget something like that. It stays with you, lurking in the back of your mind, especially when you're driving at night through dark, empty places. You start noticing things you didn't before. Strange lights on the horizon, odd patterns in the stars, moments where your GPS doesn't quite match up with where you think you are. And you wonder, how many other people have seen these things? How many other drivers, flying down dark highways at 3 in the morning, have looked up and seen something that made them question everything they thought they knew about the world? I've been driving trucks for 15 years. I've seen beautiful things, sunrises over mountains, northern lights dancing across the Canadian sky, storms rolling across the plains like something out of a painting. But I've also seen things that don't fit, things that don't belong. And after that night on Highway 50, I can't unsee them. The white line is still out there. I know it is. And sometimes, late at night when I'm alone on the road, I wonder what would have happened if we'd stopped, if we'd gotten out of the truck and walked toward it. Would we have found answers, or would we have found something worse? I guess I'll never know. But here's what I do know. Miri and I are getting married next spring. We've been planning the wedding, picking out colors and venues and all those little details that seemed so important before. But every now and then, in quiet moments, she'll look at me with this expression that says she's thinking about it too, about that night, about what we saw. And we both know, without saying it out loud, that our lives changed on that highway. We saw something we weren't supposed to see, something that exists in the spaces between what we know and what we're afraid to admit might be real. The white line is out there, hanging in the darkness, waiting for the next driver to come along and see it. Just pray it's not you. You'd think after something like that I'd quit trucking. Maybe get a job driving local, staying close to home, never venturing onto those dark, lonely highways again. But the thing is, trucking is all I know. It's all I've ever known. And despite what happened, despite the fear that still grips me when I pass through certain stretches of road, I keep driving. Miri understands. She doesn't like it, but she understands. "Just promise me you won't drive Highway 50 anymore," she said one morning over coffee. "Promise me you'll take a different route." I promise. And I meant it. I really did. But here's the thing about the trucking industry. Sometimes you don't get to choose your route. Sometimes dispatch tells you where to go, and you go there. End of story. And 3 months after that night, dispatch told me I had a load going from Salt Lake City to Denver, and the fastest route was straight through Gunnison. Highway 50. I called Miri immediately. "I have to drive through there again." "No, Jackson, you promised." "I know, but I don't have a choice. It's my job." "Then quit your job. We'll figure something out, but you cannot go back there." "Miri, Jackson, please, I'm begging you. Don't do this." The desperation in her voice nearly broke me. But I had bills to pay. We had a wedding to plan. I couldn't just walk away from a job because I was scared. "I'll be fine. It's broad daylight this time. Whatever we saw, it only happened at night, right?" She didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was small. "Please be careful." "I will. I love you. I love you too." I left Salt Lake City at noon, giving myself plenty of time to get through that section of highway before dark. The weather was clear, not a cloud in the sky. Perfect driving conditions. I told myself I was being paranoid, that nothing would happen, that everything would be fine. I was wrong. The drive to Gunnison was uneventful. I passed through small towns with names like Salina and Maysville, stopped for gas and a sandwich, made good time. By 3 in the afternoon, I was approaching the area where we'd seen the white line. My hands were sweating despite the cool air blowing through the vents. Nothing happened. I drove past the spot, and nothing happened. No white lines, no GPS glitches, no headlights malfunctioning. Just normal, boring highway. I actually laughed with relief, feeling foolish for being so worked up. "See?" I said out loud to the empty cab. "Nothing to worry about." But as I said it, I noticed something odd. The highway was completely empty. Not a single car in either direction. That wasn't unusual out here, but given that it was the middle of the afternoon on a weekday, I'd expected to see at least some traffic. I checked my mirrors. Nothing behind me. I scanned the road ahead. Nothing there either. Just me, alone on the highway, surrounded by miles of high desert scrubland. That's when I saw the woman. She was standing on the side of the road, maybe 100 yards ahead. Just standing there, not moving, not waving for help. Just standing, watching me approach. My first instinct was to stop. She could be in trouble, could need help, but something about the way she was standing, perfectly still, arms at her sides, facing the road, made me hesitate. As I got closer, I could see her more clearly. She was wearing a long white dress that looked out of place in the dusty desert landscape. Her hair was dark and hung straight down past her shoulders, and her face was wrong. I can't explain it better than that. From a distance, she looked normal enough, but as I drew nearer, I realized her features didn't quite match up. Her eyes were too far apart. Her mouth was too wide. It was like looking at a mannequin, something made to look human but not quite succeeding. I pressed harder on the gas, intending to blow past her, but as I approached, she turned her head, slowly, mechanically, to follow my truck with her eyes. And in that moment, I felt something I'd never felt before. The absolute certainty that I was being hunted. I don't know how else to describe it. It was the same feeling a rabbit must get when it realizes the shadow overhead is a hawk. Pure, instinctive terror. I rocketed past her, and in my side mirror I watched her turn her entire body to continue watching me drive away. No movement in her legs, no shift in her posture. She just rotated, like she was on a turntable. "What the hell?" I whispered. "What the hell was that?" My phone rang, making me jump so hard I nearly swerved into the other lane. I fumbled for it, saw Miri's name on the screen. "Miri, I can't talk right now. Where are you?" Her voice was sharp with panic. "I'm on Highway 50, about 20 miles past where we saw. You need to get off that highway, right now." "What? Why?" "Because I've been researching. Jackson, that area has the highest concentration of UFO sightings in Colorado. People have been seeing things there for decades. Strange lights, missing time, encounters with things that look human but aren't." My blood ran cold. Things that look human but aren't? Yes. There are reports going back to the 1960s of people seeing figures on the side of the road. They look like people from a distance, but when you get close... "Jackson, did you see something?" There was a woman standing on the side of the road. She looked... wrong. Miri let out a sound that was half sob, half gasp. "Get off that highway. Take the next exit, any exit, and get somewhere with people around you." "There are no exits out here, Miri. It's just open highway for miles. Then drive faster. Get to Gunnison as quickly as you can." Okay, I'm going." I hung up and pressed the accelerator to the floor. The truck groaned as it picked up speed, the engine roaring. I kept my eyes locked on the road ahead, refusing to look at the mirrors, refusing to acknowledge the creeping sensation that something was following me. The sun was starting to dip toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the desert. In another hour, it would be dark. I needed to get to Gunnison before that happened. But the universe had other plans. 20 minutes later, the truck started making a strange sound, a rhythmic thumping from somewhere in the engine. I knew that sound. I'd heard it before on other trucks. It was the death rattle of a dying alternator. "No," I said. "No, no, no. Not now. Please, not now." The sound got louder. The dashboard lights flickered, and then, one by one, the truck's systems started failing. First, the radio cut out. Then the GPS screen went black. The heater stopped blowing, and finally, horribly, the engine started to sputter. I managed to coast to the side of the highway before the whole thing died. The sudden silence was deafening. I sat there in the driver's seat, hands still gripping the wheel, as the reality of my situation sank in. I was stranded, in the middle of nowhere, on Highway 50, the same highway where we'd seen the white line, where other truckers had reported missing time and strange phenomena. And it would be dark soon. I grabbed my phone to call for help, but of course there was no signal. There never was out here. I could try the CB radio, but if the truck's electrical system was dead, chances were the radio wouldn't work either. I had 3 options. Stay in the truck and hope someone drove by. Try to walk to the nearest town, which was at least 10 miles away. Or what? There was no good third option. I decided to stay in the truck, lock the doors, keep my head down, and wait for morning. Someone would come by eventually. They had to. The sun continued its descent. The shadows grew longer, and as the light faded from the sky, I saw something that made my heart stop. There were lights in the distance, multiple lights, arranged in a pattern I couldn't quite make out. They weren't moving, weren't blinking, just hanging there in the darkening sky maybe half a mile away. At first I thought they might be communication towers, but there were no towers out here. Nothing but flat desert and low scrub brush. The lights started moving. Not all at once. First, one would shift position, sliding silently to the left or right. Then another would move up or down. They weren't moving randomly, though. There was a pattern to it, a kind of choreography that suggested intelligence. Purpose. I locked the doors. All of them. Even though I knew it was pointless, even though whatever was out there could probably get in if it wanted to, I locked every door on the truck. The lights were getting closer. I could see now that they weren't individual lights, but one large object covered in lights. It was triangular in shape, dark against the darkening sky, moving with a silence that was unnatural for something that size. As it approached, I could make out more details. Smooth, seamless surfaces. No seams, no rivets, nothing that suggested it was built by human hands. It passed directly over the highway, maybe 200 feet above me. I could feel it somehow, could sense the weight of it pressing down on the air. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to run, to hide, to do something, but I couldn't move. I was frozen, watching this impossible thing glide past like it owned the sky. And then it stopped. It stopped directly above my truck and just hovered there. Silent, waiting. I stopped breathing. I couldn't help it. My lungs refused to work. My heart felt like it was trying to hammer its way out of my chest. And all I could do was stare up through the windshield at this thing that shouldn't exist. A beam of light shot down from the center of the craft. Not like a spotlight. This was different. The light seemed solid somehow, like I could reach out and touch it. And in the center of that beam, something was descending. A figure. It was humanoid in shape, but clearly not human. Too tall, too thin, with limbs that bent in ways that weren't quite right. As it descended, I could see that it wasn't walking down the beam. It was being lowered, like it was standing on an invisible platform. The figure reached the ground about 20 feet in front of my truck. The beam of light disappeared, and I was left staring at this thing in the growing darkness. It looked at me. I don't know how I knew it was looking at me. It didn't have eyes that I could see, just a smooth, featureless face that somehow conveyed attention. And in that moment of connection, I felt something enter my mind. Not words, not exactly, but concepts, ideas. A kind of communication that bypassed language entirely. It was curious about me, interested. It wanted to know what I was, how I worked, why I was here. And underneath that curiosity was something else. Something that felt almost like pity. The experience lasted maybe 10 seconds, but it felt like an eternity. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the figure began to rise back up into the beam of light. The light retracted into the craft, and the craft itself started moving again, gliding away across the desert until it disappeared over the horizon. I sat there in the dark, shaking, trying to process what I'd just witnessed. My phone rang. I stared at it in disbelief. There was no signal out here. There shouldn't be. But the phone was ringing, Mary's name flashing on the screen. I answered it with trembling hands. "Mary? Jackson. Oh, thank God. I've been trying to call you for an hour. Where are you?" The truck broke down. I'm still on Highway 50. Are you okay? Did you see anything else? I wanted to tell her. I wanted to explain what had just happened. But the words wouldn't come. How do you explain something like that? How do you make someone understand? "I'm okay," I said finally. "The truck's dead, but I'm okay. I'm coming to get you. Stay on the line with me, okay? Don't hang up." Okay. We talked for the next 3 hours while she drove out to me. We talked about the wedding, about her day at the hospital, about everything except what I'd just experienced. She knew I wasn't telling her something, but she didn't push. She just kept me company across the miles, her voice a lifeline in the darkness. When she finally arrived, she wrapped me in a hug so tight I could barely breathe. "I thought I'd lost you," she whispered. "I'm okay. I'm here." But that wasn't entirely true. Part of me was still standing on that highway, staring up at something I couldn't explain, feeling something alien touch my mind. We got a tow truck to haul my rig to Gunnison. The mechanic there couldn't find anything wrong with it. The alternator was fine. The battery was fully charged. According to every diagnostic test he ran, the truck should have been running perfectly. "Don't make sense," he muttered, scratching his head. "It's like something just turned it off." Mary and I exchanged a look but said nothing. We drove home in her car, leaving my truck to be fixed and delivered later. The whole way back, I kept thinking about what I'd experienced. The craft, the figure, the wordless communication that had passed between us. It knew me. In those few seconds, it had known me better than I knew myself. It had looked into my mind and seen what? What had it found there that made it look at me with something like pity? "Jackson," Mary said quietly. "What really happened out there?" I told her. All of it. The woman on the side of the road, the lights, the craft, the figure that had descended and looked into my soul. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. "Do you believe me?" I asked. "Yes, and I think we need to stay away from that place. Whatever's out there, it's not done with that highway. It's been there for decades, and it'll be there for decades more. But we don't have to be." Agreed. "And Jackson, maybe it's time to think about a career change. Something that doesn't involve driving through the middle of nowhere at night." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Yeah, maybe you're right. But here's the thing. I'm still driving, still taking those long hauls across empty highways. Because despite everything, despite the fear and the questions and the knowledge that there's something out there we don't understand, I can't stop. Maybe it's addiction, maybe it's stubbornness. Or maybe, deep down, part of me wants to see it again. Wants to understand what it was, where it came from, why it's here, and that scares me more than anything. 6 months have passed since that night on Highway 50. 6 months of trying to convince myself that it was stress or exhaustion or some kind of hallucination brought on by fear. 6 months of failing to convince myself of anything except the truth. I saw something real, something that shouldn't exist. and it saw me too. Miri and I got married last month. A small ceremony, just family and close friends. It was perfect, exactly what we'd wanted. During the reception, her mother pulled me aside and said something that stuck with me. "You take care of my daughter, Jackson. I see the way she looks at you when you leave for a drive. She's terrified every time. So you come home safe, you hear me?" I promised I would, but we both knew I couldn't guarantee it. The nightmares started about a month after the incident. Always the same. I'm driving through darkness, and ahead of me is that white line hanging in the air. I try to stop, try to turn around, but the truck won't respond. It just keeps moving forward, pulling me toward that opening in reality, toward whatever waits on the other side. I wake up in a cold sweat, and Miri holds me until the shaking stops. "Maybe you should see someone," she suggested one morning. "A therapist, someone who specializes in trauma." "And tell them what? That I saw a UFO? You could talk about the stress of the job, the long hours. You don't have to mention the other stuff." But I knew I'd have to mention it eventually. It was the core of everything. The thing that had changed me, that had opened my eyes to possibilities I'd never considered before. I started researching instead. Spent hours online reading about UFO sightings in Colorado, specifically around the San Luis Valley and the Gunnison area. What I found was both comforting and terrifying. I wasn't alone. There were hundreds of reports, thousands maybe. People who'd seen strange lights, experienced missing time, encountered beings that looked almost human but not quite. The reports went back decades, some even to the 1800s. Native American tribes in the area had legends about sky people who would descend from the stars to walk among them. I found a forum where people shared their experiences. Reading through the posts was like reading my own story over and over again. Different details, different circumstances, but the same underlying truth. Something was happening in that part of Colorado. Something that defied explanation. One post in particular caught my attention. It was from a guy named Marcus, a geologist who'd been working in the area for 20 years. "I've seen things that would make most people question their sanity," he wrote. "Lights that move in impossible ways, objects that appear and disappear in seconds. But the most disturbing thing I've seen is what I call the Watchers. They look human from a distance, but when you get close, you realize they're not. They're something else. Something wearing a human shape like a costume." The Watchers, that's exactly what the woman on the side of the road had been. I reached out to Marcus, sent him a private message explaining what I'd experienced. He responded within an hour. "You saw one of the Watchers. You're lucky you didn't stop. The people who stop don't always come back the same. Some don't come back at all. Whatever they are, they're studying us, watching us. And they've been doing it for a very long time." "Do you know what they want?" I asked. "No, but I think they're waiting for something, or someone. And I think that stretch of highway is some kind of, I don't know, gateway, thin place, somewhere the barrier between our world and theirs is weaker." The conversation disturbed me more than I wanted to admit. A gateway, that white line we'd driven through. Had that been a portal? Had we crossed into something else for those few minutes when time seemed to stop? I didn't share any of this with Miri. She was worried enough as it was. But then, something happened that I couldn't keep from her. I got a package in the mail. No return address, just my name and address written in precise, mechanical handwriting. Inside was a single photograph. It was a picture of my truck. On Highway 50, on the night it broke down. The photo was taken from above, looking down on the truck from what must have been several hundred feet in the air. I could see myself sitting in the driver's seat illuminated by the interior lights, and hovering directly above the truck, clearly visible in the photo, was the craft. Written on the back of the photo in that same mechanical handwriting, "You were seen." My hands were shaking so badly I dropped the photograph. Mary picked it up, looked at it, and went pale. "Who sent this?" "I don't know." "Jackson, this was taken from, I know." "So, they have your address, they know where we live." "I think they've always known where we live." She sank into a chair, still holding the photograph. "What do they want from us?" "I don't know. But sending this, it's a message. They want us to know they're watching." "Should we go to the police?" "And tell them what? That aliens sent us a picture?" She laughed, but it was a desperate, broken sound. "This is insane. This whole thing is insane." I sat down beside her and took her hand. "I know. But we're going to be okay. Whatever this is, whatever they want, we'll figure it out together. Will we?" She looked at me with tears in her eyes. "Or is this just the beginning? Are they going to keep watching us for the rest of our lives? Are we ever going to be safe again?" I didn't have an answer for her, because the truth was, I didn't know. I didn't know if we'd ever be safe. I didn't know if we'd ever have a normal life again. The only thing I knew for certain was that we'd been marked, noticed, and whatever had noticed us wasn't done with us yet. Over the next few weeks, strange things started happening. Small things at first. Our electronics would glitch, TVs turning on by themselves, phones ringing with no one on the other end, the internet cutting out at odd hours. We'd hear sounds at night, soft humming noises that seemed to come from outside our window. Miri started having nightmares too. She'd wake up crying, saying she'd dreamed of lights and beings with two large eyes standing around our bed, watching us sleep. "They were so close," she whispered one night. "I could feel them breathing, but they didn't have mouths. How were they breathing without mouths?" I held her and said nothing, because I'd been having the same dreams. Then the missing time started. The first time it happened, I was driving to the grocery store. It was a 15-minute drive, a route I'd taken hundreds of times. But when I arrived at the store and checked my phone, 3 hours had passed. 3 hours I couldn't account for. 3 hours that were just gone. I drove home in a daze, and when I got there, Miri was frantic. "Where were you? I've been calling and calling." "I went to the store." "Jackson, you left 6 hours ago. Where have you been?" 6 hours? No, I left maybe 20 minutes ago. She showed me her phone, the timestamps on her calls, the worried text messages, and I had no explanation, no memory of where I'd been or what I'd been doing. It happened to Miri next. She went to work one morning and didn't come home until midnight. When I called the hospital, they said she'd left her shift at 3 p.m. like usual. 8 hours unaccounted for. She had vague memories of driving, of seeing lights, of feeling like she was somewhere else, but nothing concrete, nothing that made sense. "They're taking us," she said. "That's what this is. They're taking us and we can't even remember it happening. We don't know that. It could be stress or don't. Don't try to rationalize this. We both know what's happening." She was right. We did know. But admitting it meant facing a reality that was too terrifying to contemplate. I reached out to Marcus again, told him what was happening. His response was immediate. "Get out of Colorado, now. Pack your things and leave. Don't tell anyone where you're going, just go." "We can't just leave. We have jobs, a mortgage. None of that matters if you're not here to enjoy it. These episodes of missing time, they're going to get worse. Eventually, you'll lose days, weeks, maybe more, and when you come back, if you come back, you won't be the same." how do you know all this?" "Because it happened to me. I lost 6 months once. Just woke up one day and 6 months had passed. My wife had left me. My job was gone. My whole life had fallen apart. And I couldn't remember a single day of it. Get out while you still can." I showed the message to Miri. She read it 3 times, her face getting paler with each pass. "We need to leave," she said finally. "Where would we even go? I don't care. Anywhere but here. Anywhere they're not." We talked about it for days. Weighed our options. Considered the possibility that we were both losing our minds. But in the end, the decision was made for us. I woke up one morning to find Miri standing at the bedroom window, staring out at the sky. Dawn was just breaking, painting everything in shades of pink and gold. "Miri, you okay?" She didn't turn around. "They're out there, right now, watching the house." I got up and looked out the window. At first, I didn't see anything. Then I noticed a car parked across the street. A dark sedan with tinted windows. It hadn't been there when we went to bed. How long has that car been there? All night. I woke up around midnight and it was already there, just sitting there, watching. Maybe it's someone's guest. "Jackson, I've been watching it for 6 hours. No one's gotten out. No one's gotten in. It's just sitting there." I grabbed my phone and called the non-emergency police line. Explained that there was a suspicious vehicle parked outside our house. The dispatcher said they'd send an officer to check it out. We watched from the window as a patrol car pulled up 20 minutes later. The officer got out, walked over to the sedan, and peered in the windows. Then he walked back to his car, got in, and drove away. The sedan didn't move. What the hell? I grabbed my jacket. "I'm going down there." "Jackson, no. We can't just let them sit there. Whatever this is, whoever they are, I'm done being scared." I marched outside in my pajamas and bathrobe, probably looking ridiculous but too angry to care. I walked right up to the sedan and knocked on the driver's side window. Nothing happened. I knocked again, harder this time. "Hey, you want to tell me why you're watching my house?" The window started to roll down, slowly, mechanically. And as it descended, I got my first look at whoever was inside. It wasn't a person. I mean, it looked like a person, human-shaped, human-sized, but something about it was wrong in the same way the woman on Highway 50 had been wrong. The proportions were slightly off. The movements were too smooth. And the eyes were completely black. No whites, no iris. Just pure, endless black that seemed to swallow light. It stared at me for a long moment. Then, in a voice that sounded like it was being generated by a computer, it said, "You are being monitored." "What? Why? What do you want?" "You have been selected. Observation is necessary." "Selected for what?" But the window was already rolling back up. I pounded on the glass, shouting questions. But the thing inside didn't respond. The engine started, though I hadn't heard it before, and the sedan pulled away from the curb and drove down the street at exactly the speed limit before disappearing around a corner. I stood there in the middle of the street, shaking, as Miri ran out of the house. What happened? What did they say? "We need to leave, right now, today." We spent the next 4 hours packing everything we could fit in our cars. We didn't tell our families we were leaving, didn't tell our friends. We just packed our most important belongings, withdrew cash from the ATM, and drove east. Away from Colorado, away from Highway 50, away from whatever was watching us. That was 3 months ago. We're living in a small town in Missouri now, both of us working remote jobs we found online. We use fake names when we meet new people. We pay for everything in cash. We've disappeared as completely as 2 people can in the modern world. And so far it seems to be working. No more missing time. No more strange dreams. No more cars watching our house at night. But I still think about it, about that highway, about the white line, about the beings that watched us. Sometimes, late at night, I'll go outside and look up at the stars, and I'll wonder, are they still out there? Are they still watching? And if so, who else have they selected? How many other people are living in fear, trying to escape something that doesn't want to be escaped? I don't have answers. Maybe I never will, but I know this. What we saw was real. The white line, the craft, the watchers, all of it was real. And somewhere in the Colorado high desert, it's still happening. Still waiting for the next driver to come along and see something they were never meant to see. If you ever find yourself driving through that area at night, keep your eyes on the road. Don't look up at the sky. Don't stop for figures standing on the side of the highway. And if you see a white line hanging in the air, suspended impossibly between earth and sky, just keep driving. Don't stop. Don't slow down. Because if you do, they'll know you can see them. And once they know you can see them, they'll never stop watching. That's my story. That's what happened to me and Miri on Highway 50. I don't expect you to believe me. Most people don't. They hear stories like this and think we're crazy, or attention-seeking, or just mistaken about what we saw. But we know what we saw. And we know that some highways lead to places that aren't on any map. Some roads take you further than you ever wanted to go. The white line is still out there, and it's waiting. There's something about ranch life that makes you think you've seen everything. Coyotes at dawn, eagles circling cattle, storms that turn the sky green before they rip the world apart. But what I saw at the gate that night, that wasn't nature, that wasn't weather. That was something else entirely. My name's Cole Vanister, and I run a cattle operation about 60 miles northwest of Gunnison, Colorado. We're talking real isolation here. The kind where your nearest neighbor is 12 miles away and the only sound at night is wind moving through sagebrush. It's the kind of place where you learn to trust your instincts because if something goes wrong, help isn't coming quickly. I've worked this land for 8 years. Bought the place from an old-timer who said he was done with the strangeness. At the time, I thought he meant the weather, or maybe the occasional mountain lion. I didn't understand what he really meant until October of 2021. It started ordinary enough. I'd been out checking fence lines in the northwest pasture, the one that butts up against BLM land. We'd had some cattle drift through a damaged section the week before, and I wanted to make sure everything was secure before the temperature dropped. By the time I finished, it was past 10 p.m., and the temperature had already fallen from 70 degrees to maybe 40. That's how it is out here in the high desert. The sun goes down and takes all the heat with it. You can feel your face going numb within minutes. I was heading back to the main ranch in my truck when I saw it. At first, I thought someone had left a light on at the gate. We have a main entrance gate about a quarter mile from the house, the kind with our brand welded into the ironwork. But as I got closer, I realized the light wasn't coming from a bulb or a lamp. It was just there, floating about 4 feet off the ground, directly in front of the closed gate. It was perfectly spherical, maybe 3 feet in diameter, and it glowed with this soft, white light that didn't flicker or pulse. It just hung there, completely still, like someone had taken a piece of the moon and left it at my gate. I stopped the truck about 50 yards away, engine still running. My first thought was that it was some kind of drone, maybe kids from one of the ranches playing around. But it wasn't making any noise. No buzzing, no motor sounds, nothing. I grabbed my spotlight from the passenger seat and aimed it at the thing. The beam hit it square on, and that's when I noticed something that made my skin crawl. The light wasn't casting any shadows. I mean, nothing. The gate posts should have thrown long shadows from that light source, but they didn't. The ground beneath the sphere should have been brightly lit, but it wasn't. It was like the light was, I don't know how to explain it. Like it was there, but not quite interacting with anything around it. I turned off the spotlight and just sat there, watching. The sphere didn't move, didn't react to the spotlight at all, just continued hanging in the air, glowing softly, completely silent. My phone rang, making me jump so hard I hit my head on the roof of the truck. I grabbed it, saw it was Elise Madrigal, my girlfriend. She'd been staying at the ranch house while I was out working. "Cole, where are you? You said you'd be back by 9. I'm at the main gate. Elise, there's something out here." "What do you mean, something?" "There's I don't even know what to call it, a ball of light just floating in front of the gate." Silence on the other end. Then, "What?" I know how it sounds, but I'm looking right at it. "Can you drive out here? I need someone else to see this." "Cole, if this is some kind of joke," "It's not a joke, please. Just drive out here." She hung up, and I kept watching the sphere. It still hadn't moved, still made no sound. I tried to estimate how far off the ground it was. Maybe 4 feet, like I said. Right at eye level if you were standing next to it. Almost like it wanted to be seen. About 10 minutes later, I saw headlights coming down the ranch road from the house. Elise's SUV. She pulled up next to my truck and got out, wrapping her jacket tight against the cold. "Okay, what am I supposed to—" She stopped mid-sentence, staring at the gate. "What the hell is that?" "That's what I'm trying to figure out." She walked toward my truck, never taking her eyes off the sphere. "How long has it been there?" "About 15 minutes. It hasn't moved at all." "Should we— I don't know. Should we go closer?" Everything in my body was screaming, no. But I've never been the type to run from something I don't understand. "Stay behind me." We walked toward the gate slowly. The sphere didn't react. As we got closer, I could see more details, or rather, the lack of details. It was perfectly smooth. No seams, no surfaces, no anything. Just a perfect sphere of white light. "Cole," Elise whispered, "look at the ground." I looked down. The dirt and grass directly beneath the sphere should have been illuminated. But they weren't. They looked exactly the same as the ground around them. Dark, shadowed, untouched by the light floating 4 feet above. "That's not possible," Elise said. "I know." We were maybe 20 feet away now, close enough that I could have thrown a rock and hit it. The sphere was completely motionless, and I realized I couldn't even see it moving up and down with wind or air currents. It was like it was locked in place, held by something I couldn't see. "What do you think it is?" Elise asked. "I have no idea." "Should we call someone? The sheriff?" I thought about that. What would I even say? That there was a glowing ball in front of my gate? They'd think I was drunk or crazy. "Let's just watch it for a while. See what it does." We stood there for another 10 minutes. The sphere did nothing, just hung in the air, glowing softly, completely silent. The longer I looked at it, the more unsettled I felt. It was wrong in a way I couldn't quite articulate, like looking at something that shouldn't exist. "I'm going to record it," Elise said, pulling out her phone. She held it up and started filming. After about 30 seconds, she lowered the phone and frowned at the screen. "That's weird. What? Look at this." She showed me the phone screen. The video showed the gate, the fence line, the darkness of the desert beyond. But the sphere wasn't there. The video showed nothing where we could clearly see this glowing orb floating in front of us. "Try again," I said. She recorded another 30 seconds. Same result. No sphere in the video. "Your turn," she said. I pulled out my phone and tried. Same thing. The sphere was invisible to our cameras even though we could see it perfectly with our naked eyes. "This doesn't make sense," Elise said. Her voice was shaking now. "Cole, what are we looking at?" "I don't know." And then, without warning, it was gone, not fading away, not moving off into the distance. Just gone. 1 second it was there, the next second it wasn't. Like someone had flipped a switch and turned it off. We stood there in the sudden darkness, listening to the wind and the pounding of our own hearts. "Did you see it leave?" Elise asked. "No, it just disappeared." We waited for another 20 minutes, but the sphere didn't come back. Eventually, the cold drove us back to our vehicles. As I was getting into my truck, Elise called out to me. "Cole, check your dash cam. Maybe it picked something up." I'd forgotten about the dash cam. It ran continuously whenever the truck was on, recording everything in front of the vehicle. I pulled up the footage on the small screen, scrolling back to when I'd first stopped. There I was, sitting in the truck. I could see my spotlight come on, the beam hitting. Nothing. The gate was there, the fence posts, but no sphere. I fast-forwarded to when Elise arrived. Watched us both get out and walk toward the gate. On the video, we were walking toward absolutely nothing, just standing there staring at empty air. But here's the part that made my blood run cold. When the sphere disappeared, there was a 5-second gap in the recording. The timestamp jumped from 10:47:23 to 10:47:28. 5 missing seconds. The video didn't freeze or glitch, it just skipped forward like someone had cut out those 5 seconds with scissors. I showed Elise. Her face went pale in the truck's interior lights. "What does that mean?" "I don't know, but something happened in those 5 seconds, something the camera couldn't record." We drove back to the ranch house in separate vehicles, neither of us saying much over the phone. When we got inside, Elise immediately started making coffee while I checked the security cameras I had set up around the property. Nothing. Every camera that had a view toward the main gate showed absolutely nothing unusual. Just an empty gate, no sphere, no light. But when I checked the timestamps, every single camera had the same 5-second gap. 10:47:23 to 10:47:28. Missing time. All of them. "We should report this," Elise said, wrapping her hands around her coffee mug. "Report what? That we saw something our cameras couldn't record? That we have 5 seconds of missing footage? So we just do nothing?" I didn't answer, because the truth was, I didn't know what to do. Call the sheriff and sound crazy? Post about it online and become the local UFO nut? Neither option seemed appealing. We didn't sleep much that night. Every time I started to drift off, I'd see that sphere in my mind, perfectly round, perfectly still, casting light that didn't illuminate anything. Around 3 a.m., I gave up trying and went to check on the cattle. Everything seemed normal. The animals were calm, bedded down in their usual spots. No signs of distress or unusual behavior. Whatever that thing had been, it hadn't bothered them. When I got back to the house, Elise was sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open. "I've been researching," she said. "Cole, we're not the first people to see something like this, not even close." "What do you mean?" She turned the laptop toward me. On the screen was a forum thread about UFO sightings in Colorado, specifically around the San Luis Valley and the Uncompahgre Plateau. There were dozens of reports, maybe hundreds, of strange lights behaving in impossible ways. One report from 2018 described a luminous sphere that cast no shadow. Another, from 2015, mentioned missing footage on multiple camera systems. A third, from 2019, talked about a glowing orb that appeared and disappeared without warning, leaving no trace. These all happened within 60 miles of here, Elise said, some even closer. There's a pattern, Cole. This area has the highest concentration of UFO reports in Colorado. People have been seeing things here for decades. But what are they seeing? What was that thing? She clicked on another link. This one was an interview with a retired Air Force officer who'd been stationed at a base near the valley in the 1970s. "We saw them all the time," he said in the interview. "Lights that moved in ways that defied physics. Objects that appeared on radar but were invisible to the naked eye, or vice versa." The official line was always weather balloons or atmospheric phenomena, but we knew better. Whatever they were real, and they were interested in something out there in that desert. I leaned back in my chair, trying to process what I was learning. So, this has been going on for 50 years? Longer? At least. There are even Native American legends about lights in the valley. They called them sky spirits or something like that. Cole, what if this is something that's always been here? Something that exists alongside us, but most people never see it. Then why did we see it? Why tonight? She didn't have an answer for that. Over the next few days, I tried to go back to normal ranch work. Feeding cattle, checking water lines, fixing fence. But my mind kept drifting back to that sphere. I found myself driving past the main gate multiple times a day looking for any sign of it. Nothing ever appeared. Elise stayed at the ranch, too nervous to go back to her place in Gunnison. Not that I blamed her. After what we'd seen, the idea of being alone seemed like the worst possible option. About a week after the first sighting, something else happened. I was out checking the northwest pasture again, same area where I'd been when I first saw the sphere. It was around 9 p.m., full dark, clear sky. I'd just finished checking a water tank when I noticed something odd. The cattle were all standing in a line. Not grazing, not milling around like they usually did. Just standing in a perfectly straight line, all facing the same direction. Toward the BLM land. Toward the north. I've been around cattle my whole life. I've never seen them do anything like that. They're herd animals, sure, but they don't form lines. They cluster together, they spread out to graze, but they don't line up like soldiers. I got out of the truck and walked toward them. As I got closer, I realized they weren't moving at all, not even their tails. They were completely still, like statues. "Hey!" I shouted, waving my arms. "Move!" Nothing. They didn't even twitch. I walked right up to the nearest cow and touched her shoulder. She was warm, breathing normally, but she didn't react to my touch at all. It was like she was frozen. That's when I noticed the temperature had dropped. Drastically. I could see my breath fogging in the air even though it had been maybe 50 degrees just moments before. My fingers were already going numb. And then I saw it. In the distance, maybe half a mile away, there was a light. Not on the ground. Not in the sky. Somewhere in between, hovering over the desert at about the height of a telephone pole. It wasn't the same sphere from the gate. This was different, larger, more diffuse. It looked like a vertical column of light, maybe 10 feet wide, stretching from the ground up into the sky. Or maybe from the sky down to the ground. I couldn't tell which. The column wasn't moving, but I could see things moving inside it. Shapes, dark shapes, impossible to make out clearly, but definitely there. Moving up and down within the light, like, I don't know, like things swimming in water. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to get in the truck and leave. But I couldn't move. I just stood there next to a line of frozen cattle, watching this impossible column of light in the distance. How long did I stand there? I don't know. Could have been seconds. Could have been minutes. Time felt strange, elastic, like it wasn't flowing normally. Then the light was gone, just like the sphere at the gate. There, 1 second. gone the next. And the moment it disappeared, the cattle moved. Not panicked, not startled. They just went back to normal. Started grazing again like nothing had happened. The temperature went back to normal too. That crushing cold lifted instantly, leaving just the usual October chill. I got back in my truck with shaking hands and called Elise. It happened again. What happened? I saw another one. Different this time. And the cattle, Elise, the cattle were standing in a line. They were frozen. They didn't move until the light disappeared. I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line. Where are you right now? Northwest pasture. Get out of there, right now. Come back to the house. I'm coming. I drove back faster than I should have, the truck bouncing over ruts and rocks. When I got to the house, Elise was waiting on the porch with both of our jackets. We're leaving, she said. What? Where? I don't care. A hotel in Gunnison, a friend's place. Anywhere but here. Cole, something is happening on this ranch, and I don't think we should be here when it happens again. She was right. I knew she was right, but this was my land, my home, my livelihood. I couldn't just abandon it because of some lights. One more night, I said. If nothing happens tonight, we'll talk about it tomorrow. She didn't look happy, but she agreed. That night, we sat in the living room with all the lights on, watching the security camera feeds on my laptop. Every camera, every angle, displayed on a split screen. We didn't talk much, just drank coffee and watched and waited. Around 2 a.m., something appeared on the feed from the main gate camera. The sphere was back. Same size, same position, floating 4 feet off the ground directly in front of the gate. But this time the camera could see it. Clear as day, right there on the screen. Why can we see it now? Elise whispered. The cameras couldn't pick it up before. I don't know. Maybe it wants us to see it this time. We watched the sphere for 10 minutes. It didn't move. Then, slowly, a second sphere appeared next to it. Then a third, then a fourth. Soon, there were a dozen of them, all perfectly spaced, forming a horizontal line across the width of the gate. Each one glowing with that same soft white light that cast no shadows. Cole! Elise's voice was barely audible. The spheres started moving, not all at once, but in sequence like a wave. First, one would rise about 6 inches, then settle back. Then the next one would do the same. Then the next. It created this rippling effect, like they were communicating with each other, or with us. We need to leave, Elise said, right now. Wait, let's just see what... All 12 spheres vanished simultaneously, and on every single camera feed, the timestamp jumped forward. This time, not 5 seconds, 30 minutes. We'd been sitting there watching the cameras, and somehow, 30 minutes had vanished. I looked at my phone. The time matched the cameras. 2:42 a.m., but I remembered looking at the clock when the spheres appeared. It had been 2:12 a.m. Cole, Elise said, standing up. We lost half an hour. I know. We were sitting right here. We didn't black out. We were watching the screen the whole time. How did we lose 30 minutes? I didn't have an answer. Because the truth was, I remembered watching those spheres for maybe 10 minutes, not 30. Somewhere in there, 20 minutes had just disappeared. We're leaving, Elise said again. Pack a bag. We're going to Gunnison, and we're staying there until we figure out what to do. This time, I didn't argue. We checked into a motel in Gunnison just after 3 a.m. The guy at the front desk barely looked at us, too absorbed in whatever game he was playing on his phone. We got a room on the 2nd floor, and I made sure to park where I could see both vehicles from the window. Neither of us slept. We just sat on the bed, lights on, curtains open so we could watch the parking lot. Waiting for what? For those spheres to appear again? For something worse? We can't go back there, Elise said around dawn. Not to live, not ever. It's my ranch. It's everything I have. Cole, listen to yourself. Everything you had. Past tense. Because whatever's happening there, it's not going to stop. Those things, they're not done with that place. I wanted to argue. Wanted to tell her she was overreacting. That we'd figure it out, that everything would be fine. But I couldn't. Because she was right. We spent the day making calls. I contacted a property management company about leasing out the ranch. Told them I had a family emergency out of state. Needed someone to handle the cattle operation for a while. They were expensive, but I didn't care. I just needed someone else there. Needed to know I wasn't abandoning the animals to whatever was happening. Elise called the hospital where she worked, requested an immediate leave of absence. Her supervisor wasn't happy, but Elise had enough vacation time saved up that they couldn't refuse. By evening, we had a plan. We'd drive to her parents' place in Durango, stay there for a few weeks while we figured out our next move. Maybe the distance would help. Maybe whatever was watching us would lose interest if we weren't on the ranch. We left Gunnison just before sunset, taking Highway 550 south, the long way around, avoiding Highway 50 and the ranch entirely. The drive should have taken about 3 hours. It took 7, not because we got lost, not because of traffic or road construction. We just lost time again. 1 minute we were passing through Montrose, the sun just touching the horizon. The next minute, or what felt like the next minute, we were pulling into Durango in complete darkness, and Elise's GPS was showing 11:47 p.m. We'd lost 4 hours. "Did you black out?" Elise asked, her voice shaking. "At any point, did you lose consciousness?" "No. I was driving the whole time. I remember the sun going down. I remember you asking if we should stop for coffee. And then we were here." She checked her phone. "I have pictures. I was taking pictures out the window during the drive." She scrolled through her camera roll, her face getting paler with each swipe. "Cole, look at this." She showed me the screen. The photos were in chronological order based on the timestamps. Sunset over the mountains at 6:23 p.m., a roadside sign at 6:45 p.m., a rest area at 7:12 p.m., then nothing until 11:39 p.m. A blurry photo of darkness, like she'd accidentally pressed the camera button. 4.5 hours of missing photos, missing memories, missing time. "We need to see a doctor," I said. "Both of us. Carbon monoxide poisoning or some kind of neurological. Stop it. Stop trying to make this normal. You know what's happening. They took us. For 4 hours, they took us somewhere and we can't remember any of it." I pulled into a gas station parking lot and just sat there, engine running, trying to process what she was saying. They took us. The same they that had been at my ranch. The same they that had made my cattle freeze in a line and sent those spheres to watch my house. My phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. I opened it and my blood went cold. It was a photo, taken from above, looking down at my truck at that exact moment, sitting in that exact gas station parking lot. I could see myself in the driver's seat, illuminated by the phone's glow. Could see Elise beside me, her face turned toward her window. Below the photo, a single line of text. "Distance is irrelevant." I showed Elise. She stared at it for a long moment, then very calmly opened her car door and vomited onto the pavement. When she got back in, her voice was eerily calm. They followed us. We drove for 7 hours, or whatever actually happened, and they followed us the entire way. We don't know that. Yes, we do. They just told us. Distance is irrelevant. It doesn't matter where we go. They can find us. They're always watching. I looked up through the windshield, scanning the night sky. Nothing unusual, just stars and a thin slice of moon. But now I knew that didn't mean anything. They could be up there right now, invisible to the naked eye, watching us panic. What do they want? My voice cracked. Why us? We're nobody. Just a rancher and a nurse. Why are they doing this? Elise wiped her mouth with a tissue. Maybe that's exactly why. Because we're nobody. Because if something happens to us, who's going to notice? Who's going to care? We ended up not going to her parents' house. Couldn't risk bringing whatever was following us into their lives. Instead, we got another motel room, this one on the outskirts of Durango. Paid cash. Used fake names. It felt ridiculous, like we were in some spy movie, but I didn't know what else to do. That night, I tried to research. Pulled out my laptop and started searching for information about missing time, about UFO encounters, about cattle behaving strangely. What I found made everything worse. Cattle mutilations. That's what they called them. Incidents where cattle were found dead with surgical precision, organs removed, blood drained, no tracks or evidence of human involvement. The cases went back decades, concentrated heavily in Colorado, New Mexico, and Montana. San Luis Valley, where my ranch was located, had one of the highest concentrations of cattle mutilation reports in the country. I found a forum where ranchers discussed their experiences. Most were anonymous, afraid of being labeled crazy. But their stories matched what I'd seen. Cattle behaving strangely before incidents. Lights in the sky. Missing time. Electronic equipment malfunctioning. One post from a rancher near Del Norte caught my attention. I found 3 of my cows standing in a perfect triangle formation, facing inward. They'd been dead for at least 12 hours but hadn't been touched by scavengers. No coyotes, no birds, like something was keeping them away. The vet couldn't find a cause of death, no wounds, no poison, nothing. They just stopped. Another from someone near center. My security cameras caught something 3 nights ago. All 6 cameras went offline at exactly 2:47 a.m. When they came back online at 3:23 a.m., I was missing 4 hours of footage. But I was awake during that time. I remember being awake. So, where did those 4 hours go? I showed Elise the posts. She read through them, her expression getting more disturbed with each one. Cole, we need to talk to these people, find out what happened to them. If they got away, how they did it. So, I started reaching out. Sent private messages to anyone who'd posted about experiences in the San Luis Valley. Most didn't respond. A few sent back messages telling me to drop it, to forget I'd ever seen anything, to move on with my life while I still could. But one person responded with actual information. A rancher who identified himself only as TK from Monte Vista. You saw the spheres, he wrote. That means you're marked. I saw them too, back in 2017. Spent the next 6 months being watched, missing time. Strange visitors at odd hours. Things that looked human but weren't quite right. Then one night, everything stopped. No more incidents. No more missing time. I thought I was free. What happened? I typed back. His response came 30 minutes later. I moved, sold everything and moved to Wyoming. Thought distance would help. It did for about 3 years. Then last month they found me again. The spheres were back. I'm leaving Wyoming tomorrow. Don't know where I'll go. Don't know if it matters. But I'm starting to think they mark certain people, and once you're marked, you're never truly free. Why? What do they want from us? I don't know, but I think we're being studied. Like specimens in some cosmic lab. They take us, run their tests, put us back, over and over, the missing time, the strange encounters, that's them collecting data. And once they've decided you're interesting enough to study, you become a lifelong project. I closed the laptop, feeling sick. A lifelong project. That's what Elise and I were now. Test subjects for something we couldn't see, couldn't fight, couldn't escape. "What did he say?" Lise asked. "He said we're marked, and that running doesn't work. They'll find us wherever we go." She was quiet for a long moment, then, "So, what do we do? Just accept it? Live our lives knowing they could take us at any moment?" "I don't know. There has to be something. Some way to stop them or block them, or at least know when they're coming." I thought about the security cameras at the ranch, how they'd all gone offline during the incidents. Electronics. They affect electronics. Maybe we could use that. Set up some kind of monitoring system that alerts us when there's electromagnetic interference. And then what? Hide, run. They can apparently follow us anywhere. She had a point, but doing something felt better than doing nothing. Over the next few days, we tried to build some kind of early warning system. Bought EMF detectors, set up multiple cameras with redundant recording systems, kept detailed logs of anything unusual. We moved again, this time to a cabin outside Pagosa Springs that we found on a short-term rental site. For 2 weeks, nothing happened. No missing time, no strange encounters, no mysterious photos texted to our phones. We started to relax, started to think that maybe distance did help after all. Maybe whatever had been watching us had moved on to other targets. Then, Elise disappeared. I woke up one morning and she was gone. Her car was still parked outside. Her phone was on the nightstand, her shoes were by the door, but she was nowhere in the cabin. I searched everywhere, called her name until my throat was raw. Drove around the area looking for any sign of her. Nothing. I called the police, reported her missing. They took down the information but didn't seem particularly concerned. "She probably just went for a walk," the officer said. "These mountain trails can be confusing. She'll turn up." But I knew better. This wasn't a lost hiker situation. This was them. They'd taken her. I spent the day in a panic, driving every road, checking every trail, calling her phone over and over, even though I knew it was sitting on the nightstand back at the cabin. The police put out a missing person report, but told me most adults who disappear show up within 48 hours. 48 hours. How much could they do to her in 48 hours? As the sun was setting, I drove back to the cabin, planning to get some of Elise's things to show to search and rescue. Maybe they could use her scent for tracking dogs. She was sitting on the porch, just sitting there, calm as anything, watching the sunset like it was the most normal thing in the world. I jumped out of the truck and ran to her. "Elise, where were you? I've been looking everywhere. Are you okay?" She turned to look at me, and I stopped in my tracks. Something was wrong with her eyes. They weren't quite focused right, like she was looking at me but also looking through me at the same time. "Elise? Hello, Cole." Her voice sounded right, but the inflection was off, like someone doing an impression of her. "Where were you? What happened?" "I don't remember. I woke up a few minutes ago sitting here. What time is it?" I checked my phone. "Just after 7 p.m. Elise, you've been missing for 11 hours. 11 hours? She looked confused. "That's not possible. I was sleeping and then I was here." I helped her stand up, and that's when I noticed the mark on her arm. A small, perfectly circular bruise just below her elbow. It looked almost like a vaccination mark, but the edges were too precise, too geometric. "Does this hurt?" I touched it gently. She looked down at it like she was seeing it for the first time. "No, I don't feel anything." Over the next few hours, I tried to get her to remember something, anything about where she'd been. But there was nothing. Her memory went from falling asleep next to me in bed to waking up on the porch. 11 hours, completely gone. The police came by to take a statement. They seemed relieved she'd turned up safe and weren't particularly interested in the missing time or the strange bruise. Probably sleepwalking, one officer suggested. The high altitude can do strange things to people. After they left, Elise and I just sat there in the cabin, not saying much. What was there to say? They'd taken her for 11 hours and brought her back with a mark on her arm. A mark that looked like it had been made with some kind of instrument we didn't have on Earth. "I'm scared," Elise finally said. "Cole, I'm really scared. What did they do to me? What if they put something inside me?" "We'll get you checked out. Full medical workup, MRI, blood work, everything." "And if they find something, then what?" I didn't have an answer. The next day, we drove to the hospital in Durango. Elise explained she'd had a fall and wanted to make sure everything was okay. The doctor ordered X-rays and an MRI, standard procedure for her symptoms. The results came back normal. No foreign objects, no abnormalities, nothing that would explain the perfectly circular bruise or the missing 11 hours. "Must have been quite a fall," the doctor said, looking at the mark. "Though I've never seen a bruise quite that geometric. Almost looks like a branding mark." After we left the hospital, Elise was quiet for a long time. Then she said something that chilled me to my core. "What if the tests can't find it because it's not physical? What if they put something in my mind?" "Like what?" "I don't know. Instructions. Commands. What if I'm not even in control anymore? What if part of me belongs to them now?" "Elise, stop. You're still you. You're still the same person." "Am I? How would we know? How would I know?" I didn't have an answer for that either. That night I lay awake watching her sleep, looking for any signs that she wasn't herself. But she looked the same, breathed the same, made the same little sounds she always made when she was deeply asleep. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. Something fundamental. They'd taken her for 11 hours, and whatever they'd done during that time, they'd left a mark. Not just on her arm, but somewhere deeper. Somewhere we couldn't see, and I wondered, was I next? How long until they decided it was my turn? How long until I woke up somewhere with no memory of how I got there, with strange marks on my body and gaps in my mind? The early warning system I'd set up started going off around 3 a.m. All the EMF detectors screaming at once, the cameras flickering offline, the temperature dropping so fast I could see my breath. I grabbed Elise and pulled her out of bed. "We have to go. Right now." "What? Why?" "The sensors, they're coming." We ran for the truck, not bothering to grab our belongings. I just needed to get us away from there, needed to put distance between us and whatever was approaching. As we pulled out of the driveway, I looked in the rearview mirror. The cabin was lit up like Christmas, not with regular light, but with that same white glow I'd seen from the spheres. And standing in the driveway, watching us leave, was a figure. Tall, thin, not quite human-shaped. It didn't move as we drove away, just stood there watching, waiting. We drove through the night, heading east this time. Colorado was too dangerous. The whole state felt compromised. We needed to get far away, somewhere they might not follow. But as the sun came up and we crossed the state line into New Mexico, I knew in my gut that it didn't matter. Distance was irrelevant. They'd said so themselves. Wherever we went, whatever we did, they could find us. We were marked, and marks don't wash off. We ended up in Albuquerque, a city big enough that we thought we might disappear in the crowd. Rented a small apartment in a busy neighborhood surrounded by people and lights and noise. If they were watching us, At least we wouldn't be alone. Elise found work at a local clinic under her real credentials. She needed something normal, something to hold on to. I picked up odd jobs through apps, landscaping, and handyman work. Nothing that required background checks or permanent addresses. We were living like fugitives, except the thing we were running from wasn't the law. For 3 weeks, everything seemed normal. Elise went to work. I fixed fences and mowed lawns. We came home at night, made dinner, watched TV like regular people. The marks on her arm faded to nothing. The missing time became something we didn't talk about. If you never speak a thing aloud, maybe it didn't really happen. But I started noticing things. Small things at first. Elise would zone out sometimes, staring at nothing with that same unfocused look she'd had when I found her on the porch. She'd forget conversations we'd just had, leave the apartment without her phone or keys, and not remember walking out the door. "Are you feeling okay?" I asked one morning after she'd left the stove on for the 3rd time that week. "I'm fine, just tired." "Maybe you should take a few days off work, rest." I said I'm fine, Cole. Her voice had an edge to it I'd never heard before. I dropped it, but I kept watching. One night, I woke up around 2 a.m. and she wasn't in bed. I found her standing at the window, looking up at the sky. "Elise, what are you doing?" "Watching." "Watching what?" "They're up there. Can't you feel them?" I looked out the window, saw nothing but city lights and a hazy sky. There's nothing there. They're always there. Even when we can't see them, they're always watching. She turned to look at me, and in the dim light from the street, her eyes looked different. Darker. "We can't run from them, Cole. Why are we even trying?" "Because we have to try. We have to. They chose us for a reason. Maybe we should stop fighting and just let them do whatever they're going to do." "That's not you talking. How do you know? How do you know what's me and what's them anymore?" She went back to bed after that, but I couldn't sleep. I lay there thinking about what TK had said. Once you're marked, you become a lifelong project. Was that what was happening to Elise? Were they slowly taking over piece by piece until nothing of the original person remained? The next morning, I reached out to TK again. "My girlfriend is changing, acting strange, saying things that don't sound like her. Is that what happened to you?" His response came quickly. "Get away from her, now. If they've been inside her mind, she's not safe to be around. I've heard stories of marked people who became conduits. They let the Watchers in, gave them access to our world. You need to leave before she opens a door you can't close." I stared at the message, feeling sick. Leave Elise? The woman I'd been with for 2 years? The person who'd witnessed everything alongside me? But what if he was right? What if she wasn't Elise anymore? I couldn't do it. Couldn't just abandon her. So instead, I decided to confront whatever was happening head on. That evening, I sat her down and told her everything I'd been noticing. The spacing out, the forgetfulness, the strange comments about the Watchers. "Something happened to you when they took you," I said. "Something more than just the mark on your arm. I think they did something to your mind." She was quiet for a long time. Then, "I've been having dreams." "What kind of dreams?" "I'm in a room. It's white and empty, and there are figures around me. They're showing me things. Images, concepts, information I don't understand. And then I wake up and I can't remember the details, but I feel like I know things I shouldn't know." "What kind of things?" "I don't know how to explain it. Like, I understand how their technology works, even though I've never seen it. Like, I could draw blueprints for devices that don't exist. Like they're downloading information into my brain while I sleep." "Why? Why would they do that?" "I think they're preparing me for something. Or preparing through me. Cole, what if I'm not meant to stay human? What if they're transforming me into something else?" The fear in her voice was real. Whatever was happening, she was aware of it, was fighting against it. That gave me hope. We'll figure this out, I said. There has to be someone who can help, someone who understands what's happening. Over the next few days, I searched for any kind of support group, any organization that dealt with this kind of experience. What I found was a mess of conspiracy theorists and attention seekers, people who claimed to be contactees but were obviously just looking for podcast interviews. But then I found a small organization based in Sedona, Arizona. They called themselves the Marked Project, a support group for people who'd had genuine encounters with unexplained phenomena. Their website was basic, almost amateur, but the testimonials felt real. These were people describing experiences similar to ours. I called the number listed. A woman answered on the third ring. Marked Project, this is Diane. Hi, I don't know if I'm calling the right place. My girlfriend and I, we've been experiencing some things, strange things, and I don't know where else to turn. Tell me what you've experienced. So I did. All of it. The spheres at the ranch, the missing time, Elisa's disappearance and the mark on her arm, the changes in her behavior. When I finished, there was a long silence. You said the spheres didn't cast shadows? Diane finally asked. That's right. They glowed but didn't illuminate anything around them. And your girlfriend? The mark on her arm, was it perfectly circular? Yes, like it was made with a stamp or something. Mr. Vanister, that is your name, correct? I need you to listen carefully. What's happening to your girlfriend? It's a process. They're integrating her into their system, for lack of a better term. If we don't intervene soon, she'll reach a point where the changes become irreversible. What kind of changes? She'll become a hybrid. Part human, part them. Her body will still be here, but her consciousness will be split between two worlds. Some people call them walk-ins, others call them the changed, but the end result is the same. The person you knew will be gone. My mouth went dry. How do we stop it? You can't, not completely. But you can slow it down, maybe even pause it. There are places, thin places where the veil between worlds is already weak. Sedona is one of them. If you can bring her here, we might be able to help. Might? I won't lie to you. Once they've marked someone, once they've begun the integration process, there's only so much we can do. But we've had some success in helping people maintain their humanity, teaching them to resist the pull. It's not a cure, but it's better than the alternative. We'll be there as soon as we can. I hung up and immediately started packing. Elise was at work, wouldn't be home for another 3 hours. I'd surprise her, tell her we were taking a trip, that I'd found people who could help. But when she walked through the door that evening, she already knew. You called them, she said. No question in her voice. Simple statement of fact. How did you? I heard you. Not with my ears. But I heard you making the call. Heard every word you said. Cole, they're in my head. I can hear things I shouldn't be able to hear. Know things I shouldn't know. It's getting stronger. That's why we need to go to Sedona. These people, they might be able to help. She shook her head slowly. It's too late for that. Don't say that. It's not too late. We can still... Cole, listen to me. Really listen. Part of me is already gone. Part of me is with them wherever they are. And that part, it doesn't want to fight anymore. It wants to let go, to become what they're making me into. But another part of you called out for help. Another part of you is scared. Yes, that part is getting smaller. I walked over to her, took her hands in mine. Then we fight for that part. We go to Sedona, we talk to these people, and we fight. I'm not giving up on you. I won't. She looked at me with eyes that seemed to hold two different people. What if I hurt you? What if they use me to hurt you? You won't. You don't know that. You can't know that. I know you, the real you, and the real you would never hurt anyone. We left for Sedona the next morning, 400 miles southwest through the desert. The drive should have taken about 6 hours. It took 2 days, not because of car trouble or wrong turns, because we kept losing time. An hour here, 3 hours there. We'd be driving along and suddenly it would be dark, or we'd be in a different city, or entire sections of highway would be behind us with no memory of passing through. By the time we finally reached Sedona, Elise was barely speaking. She'd sit in the passenger seat, staring out the window, occasionally whispering things I couldn't quite hear. When I asked her to repeat herself, she'd look at me like she'd forgotten I was there. The marked project operated out of a small office building near the edge of town. Diane met us at the door, a woman in her 60s with gray hair and kind eyes that had seen too much. "You made it," she said, embracing us both. "Come inside. You're safe here." The office was simple. A few rooms, some chairs, a wall covered in photographs and documents. I recognized some of the images, spheres of light, strange marks on skin, blurry figures caught on security cameras. "How many people have you helped?" I asked. "Hundreds, though help is a relative term. What we do here is provide support, teach coping mechanisms, help people understand what's happening to them. We can't undo what they've done, but we can help people resist." She turned to Elise. "How far along is the integration?" "I don't know. I hear them sometimes, feel them. There are moments when I'm not sure which thoughts are mine and which are theirs." Diane nodded. "That's mid-stage. We can work with that. Late stage is when the person stops questioning, stops resisting, when they fully accept what's happening. You're not there yet." Over the next few weeks, Elise attended daily sessions with Diane and others from the group. They taught her meditation techniques, mental exercises designed to create barriers in her mind, ways to recognize when thoughts weren't her own, how to push back against the foreign presence. I attended too, learning what I could to support her. I met others like us, people who'd been marked, who were fighting to maintain their humanity against something that wanted to reshape them. One man, Gerald, had been marked 15 years ago. "It never stops," he told me. The pull, the whispers, the feeling that you're supposed to be somewhere else. But you learn to live with it. You learn to be stronger than they are. Does it work? The resistance? Most of the time, but there are bad nights. Nights when they come for you anyway, when the pull is too strong to fight. You wake up somewhere else, or you don't wake up for hours. The best we can do is minimize the frequency. What about the people who don't resist? The ones who give in? Gerald's face darkened. I've seen a few of them over the years. They're not human anymore, not really. They look like us, talk like us, but there's something missing. The light behind their eyes is gone, replaced by something cold. Something that's just watching and waiting. After a month in Sedona, Elise seemed stronger. The spacing out episodes decreased. She stopped whispering to herself. The unfocused look in her eyes cleared up. "I can feel the difference," she told me one night. "There's still something there, something that's not me, but now I can put up walls around it, keep it contained. It's like having a prisoner in my mind, and as long as I keep the cell locked, I'm still in control." "Can we go home?" I asked. "Back to Colorado?" She thought about that. "I don't think there is a back. The ranch isn't home anymore. Gunnison isn't home. Maybe home is wherever we can be ourselves for as long as possible." So we stayed in Sedona, found an apartment, got jobs, tried to build something resembling a normal life. Elise continued her sessions with Diane, maintaining the mental barriers that kept her human. I went back to the ranch once, 3 months after we'd left. The property management company had been doing their job. The cattle were healthy, the fences maintained. Everything looked normal. Until I checked the security cameras. Every night, around 2 a.m., the feeds would cut out for exactly 30 minutes. And in the morning, I'd find the cattle arranged in strange patterns, sometimes circles, sometimes triangles. Once, they spelled out what looked like letters in a language I didn't recognize. The property manager hadn't noticed. "Cattle do weird things sometimes," he said with a shrug. I didn't bother explaining. Just canceled the contract, listed the ranch for sale, and left. Someone else could deal with whatever was happening there. I was done. The ranch sold quickly. Too quickly. The buyer paid cash, didn't even visit the property first. When I asked the real estate agent about them, she got a strange look on her face. "It was the oddest thing," she said. The buyer's representative was very formal, very precise. But something about them was off. I can't quite put my finger on it. "What do you mean?" "The way they moved, the way they talked. It was like watching someone who'd learned how to be human from a textbook, but hadn't quite mastered it." I didn't ask any more questions, just took the money and got out of Colorado for good. That was 2 years ago. Elise and I are still in Sedona. She works at a clinic. I run a small landscaping business. We attend the marked project meetings every week, part of a community of people who've seen things we can never unsee. The missing time episodes still happen occasionally. We'll lose an hour here, a night there, but they're less frequent now. Elise's mental barriers hold most of the time. And we've learned to live with the knowledge that we're being watched. Always watched. The spheres don't appear anymore, but we know they don't need to. Whatever marked us, whatever changed Elise, it's still there. Still monitoring, still waiting. Sometimes, late at night, I'll wake up and find Elise standing at the window, looking up at the stars. Not the vacant, empty stare she had before, just looking. "Do you ever wonder what they want?" I asked her once. "Every day, but I don't think we'll ever know. We're not meant to understand. We're just meant to be part of whatever they're doing." Does that scare you? Not anymore. I think fear is what they feed on. The more we fight, the more they're interested. So I've stopped fighting. I've started accepting. I'm marked. That's never going to change. But I'm still me, still human, and as long as I can say that, they haven't won. I wish I could tell you there's a happy ending to this story. That we found a way to break free, to undo what was done to us. But that would be a lie. The truth is, once you're marked forever. Once you've seen what we've seen, been where we've been, you can't go back to being normal. You're changed. Permanently. But here's what I've learned. Being marked doesn't mean being destroyed. It doesn't mean losing yourself. It means adapting. Learning to live in a world where the impossible is real, where we're not alone, and where some questions will never have answers. If you're reading this, if you've experienced something similar, know that you're not crazy. You're not alone. There are others like us out there, people fighting to stay human in the face of something that wants to reshape us. The spheres are still out there, still appearing at random ranches and empty highways, still marking people who see them, still collecting data for purposes we can't understand. And somewhere in Colorado, in the high desert where the wind never stops and the sky goes on forever, there's a ranch where cattle arrange themselves in patterns every night, where cameras fail at 2 a.m., where something watches and waits. I sold that ranch, but I didn't escape it. None of us ever really escape. We just learn to live with what we've become. The silent light at the ranch gate, I still see it sometimes in my dreams, perfect and spherical, glowing but casting no shadows. A light that shouldn't exist, that defies the laws of physics, that marks you just by being seen. If you ever see it, don't approach. Don't try to understand. Just turn around and go back the way you came. Because once you're marked, distance becomes irrelevant. Time becomes fluid. And the person staring back at you from the mirror might not entirely be you anymore. We're still here, still human, still fighting, but part of us will always belong to them. Have you ever had your truck just stop responding? Not die, that's different. The engine keeps running, the dashboard lights stay on, everything looks normal. But when you press the gas, nothing happens. Like the truck has decided it's done listening to you. That's what happened to me on Route 114, just outside Saguache, Colorado. And what came after made me question everything I thought I knew about the world. Name's Harlan Decker. I've been hauling freight for 23 years, mostly through the Mountain West. I know these roads like I know my own face in the mirror. Every turn, every grade, every truck stop between Denver and Salt Lake. I've driven through whiteout blizzards and hailstorms that cracked my windshield. I've seen elk herds that stretched for miles and lightning that made the whole sky look like it was on fire. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for what happened that November night in 2022. I was running a load of drilling equipment from Denver to a site near Montrose. Standard haul, nothing unusual. Left Denver around 4 p.m., planning to stop for the night in Gunnison. The weather was clear, temperature dropping fast like it does in the high desert once the sun goes down. By the time I hit Poncha Pass, it was already down to freezing. Route 114 is one of those highways that makes you feel small. Runs right along the base of the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. Nothing but open desert on one side and jagged peaks on the other. At night, it's darker than dark. No streetlights, no houses, just your headlights cutting through the blackness. I was about 15 miles past Saguache when it happened. The truck just stopped responding. The engine was still running. I could hear it, could feel the vibration through the seat. The gauges showed everything normal. Fuel, oil pressure, temperature, all in the green. But when I pressed the accelerator, nothing. The speedometer started dropping, 70, 60, 50. "Come on," I muttered, pumping the gas pedal. "Don't do this to me." But the truck kept slowing down. I tried shifting gears, tried everything I knew. Nothing worked. It was like the connection between the pedal and the engine had just disappeared. I managed to coast onto the shoulder before I stopped completely. Sat there with the engine idling, completely confused. This wasn't a mechanical failure I'd ever experienced. The engine was fine. Everything was fine. Except the truck wouldn't move. I grabbed my phone to call for roadside assistance. No signal, not unusual out here, but frustrating. I tried the CB radio next. "This is Decker, broken down on 114 eastbound, about 15 miles past Saguache. Anyone out there?" Static. I adjusted the frequency and tried again. More static. Then I noticed something odd. The static wasn't random. It had a pattern to it. A rhythmic pulse, almost like breathing. I turned the volume down, then back up. The pattern continued. Pulse, pause, pulse, pause. A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the cold. I turned off the CB and just sat there, trying to figure out my next move. I could walk to Saguache, but that was 15 miles in the dark, and the temperature was dropping fast. I could stay in the truck and hope someone drove by, or I could try to fix whatever was wrong, though I had no idea where to start. That's when I saw the lights. At first, I thought they were stars. 3 bright blue points of light high up in the sky, but then I realized they weren't moving like stars. They weren't moving at all. They were just there. perfectly still, arranged in a triangle formation. I got out of the truck to get a better look. The cold hit me like a wall. Had to be in the teens by now. My breath came out in thick clouds. I tilted my head back, staring up at those 3 lights. They were brighter than any stars I'd ever seen, brighter than planets. And they were arranged in a perfect equilateral triangle, each light exactly the same distance from the others. As I watched, one of the lights moved, just a fraction of an inch from my perspective. But up there, that probably meant it had traveled hundreds of feet. It moved smoothly, silently, repositioning itself before stopping again. Then another light moved. Then the third. They were maintaining the triangle formation, but the whole triangle was slowly rotating in the sky. I've seen satellites. I've seen planes and helicopters and even the International Space Station. This was none of those things. The movements were too smooth, too coordinated. And there was no sound. Nothing. Just 3 blue lights rotating in perfect sync. My phone rang. I jumped so hard I nearly dropped it. Looked at the screen. Unknown number. But we were in the middle of nowhere, and my phone had shown no signal just minutes ago. How was someone calling me? I answered it. Hello? Static. The same pulsing static I'd heard on the CB. Hello? I said again. Who is this? The static stopped. For a few seconds there was complete silence. Then a voice spoke. Not a human voice. It was too flat, too precise. Like a computer-generated voice, but not quite. It had an odd quality to it, like it was coming from very far away. Remain stationary. What? Who is this? Vehicle function restricted. Remain stationary. Did you do something to my truck? What's going on? But the line went dead. I looked at my phone, no signal again. The call had disconnected, but according to my phone's log, the call had lasted for 47 seconds. I'd only been talking for maybe 10. Time wasn't adding up. I looked back up at the triangle of lights. They were still rotating, still perfectly coordinated. And I realized with growing horror that I couldn't look away. Something about those lights was hypnotic. The longer I stared, the more I felt like I was being pulled toward them. Not physically, mentally, like they were reaching into my head. Headlights appeared in the distance, coming from the west. I'd never been so happy to see another vehicle. I started waving my arms, flagging them down. Please stop, I thought. Please don't just drive past. The vehicle slowed, a pickup truck. It pulled up behind mine and a man got out. He was maybe 35, wearing a heavy jacket and work boots. You okay? He called out. Truck broke down, or I don't know what happened. The engine's running, but it won't move. He walked over, and I noticed he was looking up at the sky, following my gaze. You seeing those lights? Yeah. You see them too? Hard to miss. What the hell are they? I don't know, but they showed up right around the time my truck stopped working. He looked at me with an expression I recognized, the same one I was probably wearing. A mixture of fear and confusion and the creeping realization that something very wrong was happening. Name's Pax Holleran, he said. I live about 20 miles from here. Was heading home when I saw you. Harlan Decker. Thanks for stopping. We both stood there, staring up at those 3 lights. They continued their slow rotation, never breaking formation. You think they're drones? Pax asked. Too high up and moving too smooth. Plus, there's no sound at all. Military? Maybe. But why would the military be flying anything out here at night? Pax pulled out his phone and started recording. I watched him hold it up, filming the lights. After about 30 seconds, he lowered it and looked at the screen. His face went pale. What is it? I asked. He showed me the screen. The video showed the sky, the stars, the outline of the mountains, but no lights. The triangle wasn't there. "That's not possible," I said. "We're both looking right at them." "I know, but the camera can't see them." I pulled out my phone and tried the same thing. Same result. The lights were invisible to our cameras, even though we could see them perfectly with our naked eyes. "Try again," I said. She recorded another 30 seconds. Same result. No sphere in the video. "Your turn," she said. I pulled out my phone and tried. Same thing. The sphere was invisible to our cameras, even though we could see it perfectly with our naked eyes. "This doesn't make sense," Pax said. His voice was shaking now. "Harlan, what are we looking at?" "I don't know." And then, without warning, the lights changed. The triangle formation broke. Each light moved independently, no longer maintaining the geometric pattern. They spread out, moving in different directions, accelerating impossibly fast. And then they were gone, not fading into the distance, not moving over the horizon, just gone. There, one moment, vanished the next. The weird pressure in the air disappeared immediately. Everything felt normal again. But I knew something had changed. I looked at Pax. "What time is it?" He checked his phone. His expression went from confused to disturbed. That can't be right. What does it say?" 12:07 a.m. I checked my phone. Mine says 11:23 p.m. We stared at each other. "When did you stop?" Pax asked. "What time was it when your truck broke down?" "Around 9:30, maybe 9:45. I left my house at 10:15. I know because I checked the time specifically. The drive from my place to here is about 15 minutes, so I should have passed you around 10:30. "But you just got here. At what time did you stop?" My phone says 12:40. Mine says 11:23. "Harlan, that's over an hour difference. How is that possible?" I didn't have an answer, but I knew what it meant. Time had gotten weird. While we were standing here watching those lights, time had been moving differently for each of us. "Try starting your truck," Pax suggested. I climbed back into the cab and turned the key. The engine fired up normally. I pressed the accelerator and the truck responded. The RPMs climbed, the whole vehicle shuddering with power. "It's working," I called out. "Just like that?" "Just like that." I didn't understand it. Nothing about this made sense. But my truck was working again, and every instinct I had was screaming at me to get away from this place. "You should probably get going too," I told Pax. "Whatever those lights were, I don't think we want to be here if they come back." He nodded. Yeah, you're right." But neither of us moved. We just stood there in the cold, looking up at the now normal sky, trying to process what we'd just witnessed. "You going to report this?" Pax asked. "Report it to who? The cops? The FAA? What would I even say?" "I don't know, but we both saw it. Both our phones went weird. Your truck stopped working. This was real." "I know it was real, but who's going to believe us?" Pax was quiet for a moment, then, "I've seen things before. Out here in the desert. Strange lights, weird occurrences. Everyone has. But we don't talk about it because of exactly this. Because it sounds crazy." "What kind of things?" "Lights moving in ways that don't make sense. Objects that show up on my security cameras but disappear before I can get outside to look. Time weirdness, like what just happened. This area, from Saguache all the way down to the San Luis Valley, it's a hotspot. People have been seeing strange stuff here for decades. Why doesn't anyone talk about it? Because it's Colorado. Because people have ranches and businesses and don't want to be known as the crazy UFO person. Because..." He trailed off, looking uncomfortable. "Because sometimes People who talk too much about what they've seen start having problems. What kind of problems? Equipment failures, strange visitors, missing time. It's like talking about it makes you more visible to whatever this is. A chill ran through me that had nothing to do with the temperature. So what do we do? Just pretend this didn't happen? I don't know. I'm still trying to figure that out myself. We exchanged phone numbers, or tried to. When I called his number to make sure it worked, the call wouldn't go through. When he tried calling mine, same thing. It would ring, but when we answered, there was nothing but that pulsing static. This is getting weirder, Pax muttered. You think we're being jammed? Like someone's blocking our signals? I think we saw something we weren't supposed to see, and now... He looked up at the sky nervously. Now they know we saw it. They? Whoever was controlling those lights. I wanted to tell him he was being paranoid, but I couldn't, because deep down I was thinking the same thing. We finally parted ways. Pax headed east toward his home, and I continued west toward Gunnison. But I kept checking my mirrors, half expecting to see those blue lights following me. And I kept glancing at my phone, watching the time jump around. 1 minute it would say 11:45. Then I'd blink and it would say 12:02. Then back to 11:58. Time wasn't stable anymore. It was like the encounter with those lights had broken something fundamental. I made it to Gunnison around what my phone claimed was 1:30 a.m., though I couldn't be sure. Checked into a truck stop motel and tried to sleep. Couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those 3 blue lights rotating in perfect formation. And I kept hearing that voice on the phone. Remain stationary. Vehicle function restricted. Something had taken control of my truck. Something had stopped it from moving, had held me in place while those lights did, whatever they were doing. And now, time was broken. Around 4 a.m., or so my phone said, I gave up on sleep and opened my laptop. Started searching for information about UFO sightings in the area. What I found didn't comfort me. The San Luis Valley, which includes the area where I'd broken down, is one of the most active UFO hotspots in the United States. Thousands of reported sightings going back decades. Glowing orbs, triangular formations, missing time, equipment failures. I found a report from 2019 about a rancher whose entire herd of cattle had stopped moving simultaneously. Just stood there for 15 minutes, completely still, while a blue light hovered overhead. When the light disappeared, the cattle went back to normal like nothing had happened. Another report from 2015 described a triangle formation identical to what Pax and I had seen. 3 blue lights, perfect geometric spacing, slow rotation. The witness, a sheriff's deputy, had tried to film it and got the same result we did. Nothing showed up on camera. The common thread in all these reports was the time weirdness. People would look at their watches and find hours had passed when it felt like minutes. Or they'd arrive at destinations hours earlier than should have been possible. Time became fluid in the presence of these lights. I found one forum post that particularly caught my attention. It was from someone who claimed to be a physicist. No name given, just credentials listed. What we're seeing in the San Luis Valley may be evidence of localized temporal distortions, the post read. If these objects are utilizing some form of exotic propulsion, or are observing us from outside our normal space-time, their presence could create measurable effects on local time flow. This would explain the discrepancies in watches and clocks, the missing time phenomena, and the difficulty in capturing them on camera. Cameras rely on temporal consistency to function. If time is flowing at different rates, the camera's exposure timing becomes meaningless. I sat there reading that over and over. Localized temporal distortions. Time flowing at different rates. It sounded like science fiction, but it matched what I'd experienced. Pax and I had been standing in the same place, experiencing the same event, but time had moved differently for each of us. My phone rang. Unknown number again. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Hello? Mr. Decker. Same, flat, artificial voice from before. Your vehicle has been released from restriction. Who is this? What do you want? Observation complete. Resume normal operations. Wait, what observation? What did you do? But the line went dead. And when I looked at my call log, there was no record of the incoming call. Nothing. Like it had never happened. I checked the time on my phone. 4:23 a.m. Then I looked at the clock on the laptop. 3:47 a.m. Different by 36 minutes. I grabbed the TV remote and turned on the television. The time displayed in the corner of the screen said 4:35 a.m. 3 different times, all from electronic devices sitting within a few feet of each other. Time was still broken. I managed a few hours of fitful sleep before dawn. When I woke up, I checked all my devices again. They'd synchronized overnight. All showed 8:15 a.m. Whatever had been affecting them seemed to have stopped. I tried calling Pax. The number he'd given me didn't work. Said it was disconnected. I tried texting instead. The message wouldn't send. Just sat there with a spinning wheel, pending indefinitely. It was like the universe was actively preventing us from communicating. I finished my haul to Montrose, dropped off the equipment, and started the long drive back to Denver. The whole way, I kept watching the sky, looking for those blue lights. They never appeared, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that something was tracking my movements, monitoring me. When I got home, I found something that made my blood run cold. An envelope in my mailbox with no postage, no return address, just my name printed in precise mechanical letters. Inside was a single photograph. It was my truck on Route 114, taken from directly above, maybe 100 feet up. I could see myself standing next to the vehicle, looking up at the sky. Could see Pax's pickup parked behind mine. And in the photo, visible in the night sky above us, were 3 bright points of light arranged in a perfect triangle. The camera could see them, but our phones couldn't. On the back of the photo, written in that same mechanical handwriting, temporal variance, 1 hour, 24 minutes. Subject responsive. Monitoring continues. I sat in my truck, staring at that photo, as the reality sank in. They'd been watching us from above, taking pictures, measuring something, temporal variance, whatever that meant. And they wanted me to know. Wanted me to understand that I'd been observed, studied, documented, that I was still being monitored. The worst part? I had no idea who they were, no idea what they wanted, no idea if this was over or just beginning. All I knew was that on a cold November night on Route 114, something had reached down from the sky and stopped my truck, had frozen me in place while time bent and twisted around me, had measured and documented and watched, and whatever it was still out there. 3 days after the incident, I got a call from my dispatcher. Not unusual. I was supposed to pick up a load in Wyoming that weekend. But something in his voice made me pay attention. Harlan, you had any trouble with your rig lately? Any electrical issues? Why do you ask? Because the maintenance logs are showing some weird readings. The GPS tracker shows you were stationary on Route 114 for almost 3 hours last Tuesday. But your ELD logs only show 20 minutes. Electronic logging device. Federal requirement for all commercial trucks. It tracks drive time, location, everything. I'd completely forgotten about it. There was a problem with the truck, I said carefully. Had to pull over for a while. 3 hours. Wasn't that long, maybe half an hour, tops. Well, according to the GPS, you weren't moving from 9:43 p.m. to 12:31 a.m. That's 2 hours and 48 minutes. But your ELD shows you were only stopped for 17 minutes. Harlan, those systems don't just glitch like that. What really happened out there? I didn't know what to say. How do you explain that time had broken? That two different systems had measured the same event and gotten wildly different results because reality itself had bent? Electrical problem, I finally said. Everything was going haywire. Might have affected the logging systems. Did you get it checked out? Seems to be working fine now. Harlan, I need you to bring the truck in. We've got to figure out what caused this. If those logs are compromised, we could have legal issues. I'll bring it in next week. Make it Monday. This is serious. After I hung up, I sat there trying to figure out what to do. If mechanics started digging into my truck's systems, they'd find more than just a simple electrical problem. They'd find evidence that something impossible had happened. Evidence I couldn't explain without sounding insane. I tried calling Pax again. Still couldn't get through. Tried looking him up online. Found a few social media profiles that might have been him, but I couldn't be sure. The one I thought was most likely hadn't been updated in over a year. It was like he'd disappeared. 2 days later, on Saturday morning, I got a visitor. I live in a small house on the outskirts of Thornton, just north of Denver. Quiet neighborhood, mostly older folks. I was having coffee on my porch when a dark sedan pulled up in front of my house. 2 people got out. A man and a woman, both wearing plain business suits. They walked up to my porch with the kind of confidence that said they were used to people answering their questions. "Harlan Decker?" the woman asked. "That's me. We're with the Federal Aviation Administration. We'd like to ask you a few questions about an incident on Route 114 last Tuesday." My stomach dropped. "What incident?" "You reported a breakdown. Truck stopped working around 9:45 p.m. I didn't report anything to the FAA. "No, but your company's GPS system flagged an anomaly. We follow up on unusual data, especially in areas with high air traffic." "There's no air traffic out there. It's the middle of nowhere." The man spoke up. "Mr. Decker, did you observe any unusual aerial phenomena during your stop?" There it was, the real question. They weren't here about my truck. They were here about the lights. "Saw some stars," I said carefully. "Pretty dark out there." "Nothing unusual? No aircraft? No lights behaving in unexpected ways? Just stars." The woman pulled out a tablet and showed me a screen. It was a satellite image, black and white, showing Route 114. I could see my truck pulled over on the shoulder. Could see another vehicle, Pax's pickup, stopped behind it. This image was captured at approximately 10:47 p.m. on November 12th. That's your truck, correct? Looks like it. And this second vehicle? Someone stopped to help. Asked if I needed anything. Did you get their name? Pax something. Didn't get a last name. She made a note on her tablet. Did this individual mention seeing any unusual aerial activity? We talked about trucks mostly. Weather. That's it. The man leaned against my porch railing. "Mr. Decker, let me be straight with you. This area, the San Luis Valley region, has a high number of unexplained aerial phenomena reports. When we get unusual data points like your GPS anomaly, we investigate. We're not here to make anyone look crazy. We're just trying to understand what's happening in our airspace. And what is happening? That's what we're trying to figure out. But we need witnesses to be honest with us. If you saw something unusual, it helps us understand the scope of the situation." I thought about the photograph in my mailbox, the mechanical voice on the phone, the way time had twisted and broken, and I made a decision. "I saw 3 lights," I said. "Blue lights, arranged in a triangle. They stayed in formation, rotating slowly. They were there for maybe 15-20 minutes. Then they disappeared. The woman and man exchanged a glance, not a surprised glance, more like confirmation of something they'd already suspected. Did you capture any images or video? Tried. Phone couldn't see them. Just showed empty sky. Another exchanged look. Did you experience any unusual physiological effects? The man asked. Headaches, nausea, disorientation. My ears popped, like the air pressure changed. Any missing time? Any period where you can't account for your actions? I hesitated. This felt like the crucial question, the one they'd really come here to ask. My phone and the truck's GPS showed different times after the lights disappeared. About an hour's difference. The woman made more notes. Mr. Decker, have you experienced any unusual occurrences since Tuesday? Phone calls from unknown numbers, unexpected visitors, electronic equipment malfunctioning. The photograph. She was asking about the photograph. But I didn't tell her. Something held me back. Some instinct that said once I mentioned it, something would change. Lines would be crossed that couldn't be uncrossed. Nothing unusual, I said. She studied my face for a long moment, like she knew I was lying, but she didn't push. If you do experience anything odd, we'd appreciate if you contacted us. She handed me a business card, plain white card with a phone number and email address. No names, no agency logos. That's not an FAA card, I said. No, she agreed. It's not. They left without explaining further. I watched the sedan drive away, then looked at the card in my hand. The phone number had a 202 area code. Washington, D.C. I went inside and looked up the number online. Found nothing. It didn't exist in any public directory, wasn't associated with any government agency I could find. It was like they'd given me a direct line to nowhere. That night, I couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about what the woman had asked. Unusual occurrences, electronic equipment malfunctioning, like she knew. Like she'd talked to other people who'd experienced the same things I had. Around 2 a.m., my laptop turned on by itself. I was lying in bed, half asleep, when I heard the startup chime. I sat up and stared across the room at my desk. The laptop screen was glowing, showing the desktop. I hadn't touched it, hadn't pressed any buttons. It had just turned itself on. I got up and walked over to it. The cursor was moving on its own, opening windows, navigating through files. It opened my browser and typed in a URL. A website I'd never seen before loaded. The page was black with white text. Just a single paragraph. Mr. Decker, your observations on 11/12 have been logged. Further monitoring is required. Do not attempt to establish contact with associated witness, P. Holloran. Do not discuss observations with additional parties. Compliance ensures continued normal function. Temporal variance remains within acceptable parameters. Next verification scheduled. TBD. The cursor moved to the browser's address bar and deleted the URL. Then the browser closed. The laptop shut down. The whole thing had taken maybe 30 seconds. I stood there in the dark, heart pounding. They'd accessed my laptop remotely. Knew about Pax. Knew I'd been trying to reach him. And they were telling me, no, ordering me, to keep quiet. What the hell had I stumbled into? I couldn't go back to sleep after that. Spent the rest of the night sitting in my living room with all the lights on, waiting for, I don't know what. More messages, more visitors, the lights to come back. Nothing else happened, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every device in my house suddenly felt like a potential spy. The laptop, the TV, my phone, even the smart thermostat mounted on the wall. How many of them were watching through those devices right now? Monday morning, I took my truck to the company maintenance facility like I'd been told. The mechanic who looked at it was a guy I'd known for years, Jerry Kaminsky. Good at his job, didn't ask unnecessary questions. He spent about 2 hours running diagnostics. When he came out, he looked confused. "Harlan, this is the weirdest damned thing I've ever seen." "What did you find?" "Your ELD and GPS systems are both working perfectly. I can't find any faults, any glitches, nothing wrong with the hardware or software. But the data they recorded doesn't match. It's like one system experienced a completely different timeline than the other." "Is that possible?" "Technically, no. These systems are synchronized. They pull from the same clock, the same satellites. They should always match. But yours don't, and I can't find any reason why." "Can you fix it?" Jerry shrugged. "Fix what? There's nothing broken. The systems are fine. It's the data that doesn't make sense. It's like..." He trailed off, looking uncomfortable. "It's like time itself glitched." "What would cause that?" "Harlan, I've been working on trucks for 30 years. I've seen every kind of electrical problem you can imagine, but I've never seen anything like this. And between you and me, I don't want to, because the only explanations I can think of involve stuff that shouldn't be possible." "Like what?" "Like localized temporal distortions. Like someone or something messing with space-time in a way that affected your truck's electronics. Like the kind of shit you see in science fiction movies." He lowered his voice. "Where were you when this happened?" "Route 114, east of Saguache." He nodded slowly. "San Luis Valley. Yeah, that makes sense. What do you mean?" "My cousin lives down there. Runs a ranch near Center. He's seen weird stuff. Everyone down there has. They just don't talk about it because who's going to believe them?" "What kind of weird stuff?" Jerry glanced around to make sure no one else was listening. "Equipment failures that fix themselves. Cattle acting strange. Lights in the sky that move in impossible ways. And time getting weird. He told me once about how he'd go out to check fence lines at noon, work for what felt like an hour, and come back to find it was 5 p.m. Lost 4 hours and didn't remember any of it." "Did he ever figure out what was causing it?" "No, but he stopped asking questions about it after a while. Said it was safer that way." I thought about the message on my laptop. "Do not discuss observations with additional parties." Safer how? He didn't elaborate. Just said that people who get too curious about what's happening in the valley sometimes have accidents. Equipment failures at bad times. Financial problems. One guy he knew, a rancher who'd been vocal about the lights, his barn burned down. No explanation, no cause they could find. Could have been coincidence. Jerry paused. "But my cousin doesn't think so." After I left the maintenance facility, I drove around for a while, trying to process everything. The FAA agents who weren't really FAA. The laptop message. Jerry's story about his cousin. It all painted the same picture. Something was happening in the San Luis Valley, something that had been happening for a long time, and someone, or something, wanted it kept quiet. I couldn't stop thinking about what Jerry had said. His cousin, down in the valley, losing time. The rancher whose barn burned down after talking too much. Were these warnings? Examples of what happened when you didn't stay quiet? I pulled over at a rest stop and called Jerry back. He answered on the 3rd ring. "Jerry, it's Harlan. That story about your cousin. Can you tell me more?" There was a pause. "Why do you want to know?" "Because I think I'm experiencing the same thing he did, and I need to understand what I'm dealing with." Another pause, longer this time. Then, "Meet me at the pilot truck stop off I-25, the one near Castle Rock." Give me an hour. Why not just tell me now? Because phones aren't safe. Not for this conversation. 1 hour, Harlan, and come alone. He hung up before I could ask anything else. I spent that hour driving north on I-25, my mind racing. Why would Jerry want to meet in person? What could be so sensitive that he wouldn't discuss it over the phone? And why did he sound scared? The Pilot truck stop was busy when I arrived. Dozens of rigs parked in neat rows, drivers coming and going. I found Jerry inside, sitting at a booth in the far corner of the restaurant area. He looked tired, older than he had just a few hours ago. "Thanks for coming," he said as I sat down. "Want coffee?" "Just tell me what's going on." Jerry looked around to make sure no one was close enough to overhear. My cousin, Rick, he didn't just see weird stuff, he documented it. Bought himself a fancy camera with night vision, set up motion sensors around his property. Spent 2 years collecting evidence. What kind of evidence? Photos of the lights, video of his cattle behaving strangely, audio recordings of sounds that didn't match any known animal or aircraft. He had dozens of incidents logged, all with dates, times, environmental conditions. He was building a case. What happened to it? That's the thing. One morning, he woke up and it was all gone. Every photo, every video file, every piece of documentation. His computer had been wiped clean. Not just deleted, wiped at a hardware level. Even the backup drives were empty. And here's the weird part. His security cameras showed nothing. No one breaking in, no one accessing his office. It was like the data had just vanished. I felt a chill run down my spine. You think someone broke in and erased everything? Rick thinks it was them. The lights, or whoever controls them. He said the night before it happened he'd seen the triangle formation. 3 blue lights, just like you described. They hovered over his house for about 20 minutes. The next morning, everything was gone. Did he try to recreate his research? Jerry shook his head. That's when the barn fire happened, 3 days after he lost all his data. The fire marshal said it was electrical, but Rick knew every inch of that barn. He said the wiring was fine, had just been inspected the month before. After that, he got the message. Stop investigating, or worse things would happen. Is he still down there? Yeah, still runs his ranch, but he doesn't talk about the lights anymore. Doesn't even look up at the sky when they appear. Just goes inside, locks his doors, and waits for it to pass. I sat back in the booth, trying to absorb what Jerry was telling me. This wasn't just about strange lights and missing time. This was about something actively preventing people from gathering evidence. Something that could erase digital data remotely and send clear warnings to anyone who got too curious. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because you've got that look. The same look Rick had when he first started investigating. Like you think you can figure this out, maybe even expose it. And I'm telling you, Harlan, you can't. Whatever this is, it's been going on for decades. Hundreds of people have tried to document it, understand it, expose it. They all failed. Most of them ended up like Rick, keeping their heads down and hoping to be forgotten. Some of them just disappeared. Like Pax. Who? The guy who stopped to help me that night. He's been missing since then." Jerry's face went pale. "Jesus, Harlan. You need to walk away from this right now, before you end up the same way." "I can't. They're already watching me. They've already sent warnings. Walking away won't make them forget about me." "Then do what Rick did. Acknowledge that you saw something, but stop asking questions. Stop investigating. Go back to your normal life and hope they lose interest." "And if they don't?" Jerry didn't have an answer for that. We sat in silence for a few minutes, both of us staring at our coffee cups. Finally, Jerry spoke again. There's something else. Rick told me once that he talked to other ranchers in the valley. Found out there's an unofficial network of people who've experienced similar things. They don't advertise it, don't meet up, but they stay in touch, share information quietly, warn each other when activity picks up in certain areas. Can you get me in touch with them? I don't know if Rick would be willing. He's pretty deep in hiding now, but Jerry pulled out his phone and wrote something down on a napkin. Here's his number. Don't call from your regular phone, use a burner, and don't be surprised if he hangs up on you. I took the napkin and slipped it into my pocket. Thank you, Jerry. Don't thank me yet. You might end up wishing I'd never told you any of this. After Jerry left, I sat in that booth for another 30 minutes, thinking. Rick's story had confirmed my worst fears. This wasn't just about experiencing something strange. It was about being marked, monitored, and potentially erased if you became too much of a problem. But it also gave me hope. If there was a network of people who'd survived these encounters, who'd learned how to live with the monitoring, maybe they could help me. Maybe they'd know something about where packs had been taken, or how to fight back against whatever was watching us. I ended up at a Walmart, bought a cheap burner phone with cash, and activated it in the parking lot. Then I called the number Jerry had given me. It rang 6 times before someone answered. Yeah? Rick, my name's Harlan Decker. Jerry Kaminsky gave me your number. Jerry shouldn't have done that. I know, but I need help. I had an encounter on Route 114 last week. 3 blue lights in a triangle formation. Missing time. And now someone I met that night has disappeared. There was a long pause. They told you to stay quiet, didn't they? Yes. And you're not staying quiet. I can't. They have someone. A guy named Pax Holleran. They're holding him somewhere and I need to find him. Jesus Christ. Rick's voice was tight with frustration. You have no idea what you're getting into. These things, whatever they are, they don't negotiate. They don't explain. They just take what they want and leave the rest of us trying to pick up the pieces. So I should just accept that my friend is gone? Let them keep him wherever they're keeping him? Yes. That's exactly what you should do. Because the alternative is you end up in the same place he is. And then nobody's helped anybody. Rick, please. If there's a network of people who've experienced this, I need to talk to them. I need to understand what I'm up against. Another long pause. I could hear him breathing on the other end. Could almost feel him weighing the decision. There's a bar in Alamosa, he finally said. Place called the Desert Rose. Sunday nights, around 9 p.m., some of us meet there. Back room. We don't advertise it. Don't talk about what we discuss. If you show up, don't expect anyone to trust you right away. And for God's sake, don't bring your regular phone. Don't bring anything that can be tracked. I'll be there. Harlan, one more thing. Once you walk into that room, you're committing. You're saying you'd rather fight than hide. Make sure that's really what you want, because there's no going back after that. He hung up. I sat in my truck, staring at the burner phone in my hand. Sunday night. That gave me 4 days to prepare, to decide if this was really what I wanted to do. But I already knew the answer. Pax had been trying to warn me, had been investigating this phenomenon for who knows how long, and now he was gone, taken to some facility where they were studying him like a lab rat. I couldn't leave him there, wouldn't leave him there, even if it meant putting myself in the same danger. I ended up at a coffee shop, sitting in my truck in the parking lot trying to figure out my next move. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. Hello? Static, but not the pulsing static from before. This was different. Chaotic. like someone trying to break through heavy interference. "Harlan?" A voice barely audible through the noise. "Harlan, if you can hear me. Pax, listen carefully. Don't go back to..." The static surged, drowning out his words. "Watching us, they're..." More static. "Everyone who saw..." "Pax, I can't hear you. Where are you?" "Not safe. Get out of Colorado. Get out." The static became a high-pitched squeal, then cut off abruptly. The call ended. I looked at my phone. The call duration showed 3 seconds, but I'd been on the line for at least 30, and when I tried calling back, the number didn't exist. But I'd heard his voice. Pax was trying to warn me about something, and he'd been cut off mid-sentence. I sat there in my truck, hands shaking, trying to decide what to do. Every instinct said to listen to Pax's warning, to get in my truck and drive as far from Colorado as I could. Start over somewhere new, somewhere far from the San Luis Valley and whatever was happening there. But another part of me, maybe a stupid part, wanted answers. Wanted to understand what those lights were, why they'd stopped my truck, what they'd been doing during those lost hours. I pulled out the business card the government agents had given me, stared at that DC phone number. If anyone had answers, it would be them. I dialed the number. It rang 3 times, then a recorded message. "Your call has been noted. Someone will contact you within 48 hours. Do not call this number again." Click. I sat there holding my dead phone, realizing I'd just made a choice. I'd reached out to them. Whatever happened next was on me. That night, I went home and started packing. Not everything, just the essentials. Clothes, important documents, some cash. I loaded it all into my truck, ready to leave at a moment's notice if I needed to. I was in the middle of packing when I heard it. A low, humming sound, so deep I felt it more than heard it. It made my teeth ache, made my bones vibrate. I went to the window and looked out. The street was empty. No cars, no people. But the streetlights were flickering. All of them, up and down the block, flickering in perfect sync. Then I saw them. 3 lights in the sky, blue lights, arranged in a perfect triangle. They were back, and they were directly above my house. The humming grew louder. Windows rattled. My phone started buzzing on the table, screen flashing random colors. The TV turned on by itself, showing only static. I ran outside, not even sure what I planned to do. The lights were maybe 200 feet up, rotating slowly in their perfect formation. As I watched, one of them descended. Smoothly, silently, moving straight down toward my yard. It stopped about 20 feet above the ground, just hung there. A perfect sphere of blue light close enough that I could see details I hadn't noticed before. The light wasn't uniform. It pulsed and flowed, like liquid, constantly moving beneath the surface. And it was watching me. I couldn't see eyes or cameras or any kind of sensor, but I could feel its attention focused on me like a physical weight. The humming grew intense. I covered my ears, but it didn't help. The sound was coming from inside my head. And with the sound came something else. Images, concepts. Not words, but meaning pushed directly into my brain. Compliance required. Silence maintained. Observation continues. Deviation unacceptable. I tried to look away, but couldn't. The light held my gaze, held my entire attention. Everything else, my house, the street, the entire world, faded into irrelevance. There was only the light and the message it was forcing into my mind. Then, as suddenly as it had descended, it rose back up, rejoined the triangle formation, and all 3 lights shot straight up into the sky, accelerating so fast they turned into streaks, then points, then nothing. The humming stopped. The streetlights steadied, Everything went back to normal. Except I was on my knees in my front yard, gasping for breath, with no memory of having fallen. And when I checked my phone, 2 hours had passed. 2 hours I couldn't account for. I stumbled back inside, locked every door and window, and spent the rest of the night sitting in my living room with the lights on and my truck keys in my hand, ready to run if they came back. They didn't, but I knew they would. Sooner or later, they'd be back, because I'd seen too much, known too much. And now they were making sure I understood the consequences of not staying silent. I didn't sleep that night, couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that blue sphere descending toward me, felt that humming in my bones. By dawn, I'd made a decision. I was getting out of Colorado. The problem was, I didn't know if distance would help. If they could find me at my house in Thornton, they could probably find me anywhere. But staying felt like suicide. Every day I remained, the noose tightened. I had to at least try to disappear. I called my dispatcher first thing in the morning. Told him I was taking personal leave for a few weeks. Family emergency. He wasn't happy. I had loads scheduled, but I didn't give him a choice. Just said I'd be in touch when I could. Then I started researching. If Pax had tried to warn me, maybe I could find information about what he'd been dealing with. I searched for his name combined with Saguache, San Luis Valley, UFO sightings. Found a few hits that might have been related, but nothing concrete. What I did find was disturbing. In the past 5 years, at least a dozen people in the San Luis Valley area had disappeared. Not missing persons cases that made the news, just people who were there one day and gone the next. Ranchers who abandoned their land. Researchers who came to study the phenomena and never published their findings. Locals who saw too much and quietly relocated without telling anyone where they went. I found a forum post from 2020 that made my blood run cold. If you've seen the lights, if you've experienced the time loss, you have two choices. Keep quiet and learn to live with the monitoring, or run and hope they lose interest. But whatever you do, don't try to expose them. Don't try to gather evidence or convince others. That's when you become a problem they need to solve. And they have permanent solutions. Permanent solutions. The phrase echoed in my mind as I threw more clothes into a duffel bag. Was that what had happened to the people who disappeared? Had they become problems? I was loading the last of my things into the truck when my phone rang. The DC number from the business card. I answered. Hello? Mr. Decker? A woman's voice, but not the same woman who'd visited my house. This one was older, had an authority to it. You called our number yesterday. I did. That was unwise. We told you someone would contact you within 48 hours. I saw them again last night, right above my house. Silence on the other end. Then we're aware. You're aware? You knew they came to my house and you didn't do anything? Mr. Decker, I need you to understand something. What you witnessed on Route 114, what you're experiencing now, this is bigger than you, bigger than all of us. We monitor these phenomena. We document them. We try to understand them, but we don't control them. Then who does? That's the question, isn't it? The one we've been trying to answer for 70 years. 70 years. The San Luis Valley has been a hot spot since at least the 1950s. Probably longer. The Native Americans have stories that go back centuries. We've observed, we've investigated, we've interviewed thousands of witnesses, but we're no closer to understanding what they are or what they want than we were in 1947. So you just let it happen? Let them take people, mess with time, terrorize whoever they want. We don't let them do anything. We document. We try to protect witnesses when we can. We manage information to prevent mass panic. But stop them? She laughed bitterly. We don't have that capability. Their technology, if that's even the right word for it, is so far beyond ours that we might as well be ants trying to understand nuclear physics. Then what am I supposed to do? What everyone in your position does. Make a choice. Either accept that you're being monitored and learn to live with it, or disappear and hope they lose interest. Most people choose the former. It's easier than uprooting your entire life. And if I choose to disappear, then you run. Change your name if you can. Pay for everything in cash. Stay off social media. Avoid places where the phenomena are common. And pray they don't consider you interesting enough to follow. You're telling me to run? I'm telling you your options. But Mr. Decker, there's something else you should know. Your friend, Pax Halloran. We've been trying to locate him since your initial contact. He hasn't been seen since the night of November 12th. My stomach dropped. What do you mean he hasn't been seen? He went home that night after encountering you. His neighbors saw his truck in the driveway the next morning. But by evening, the truck was gone. Pax was gone. No note, no phone calls, no credit card activity. It's like he vanished. You think they took him? We think he made a choice. Probably the same choice you're contemplating right now. But you don't know for sure. No, we don't. That's the problem with this phenomenon. People disappear. And we can't prove whether they left voluntarily or otherwise. After she hung up, I sat in my truck for a long time, trying to process what she'd said. Pax was gone. Had been for over a week. Either he'd run, or something worse had happened. I thought about his fragmented warning. Get out of Colorado. Not safe. Had he called me right before he disappeared? Had he been trying to save me from whatever was about to happen to him? I started the truck, made a decision. I wasn't staying in Colorado, but I also wasn't running blind. There was one place I needed to go first, Saguache. If Pax had gone home that night and then disappeared, maybe his house would have answers. Maybe he'd left some kind of trail, some clue about what had happened to him or where he'd gone. The drive to Saguache took about 3 hours. I avoided Route 114, took the long way around through Salida instead. Every mile, I kept checking my mirrors, watching for blue lights in the sky. Watching for that dark sedan with government plates. Nothing. Just normal highway, normal traffic. I reached Saguache around noon. Town of maybe 500 people, stretched out along Route 285. I stopped at a gas station and showed the attendant a screenshot I'd taken of one of Pax's social media photos. You know this guy? Name's Pax Halloran? The attendant, a woman in her 50s, studied the photo. Yeah, I know Pax. Lives out on County Road 43 GG. Why? Friend of mine. Said I should look him up if I was ever in the area. Well, you might have trouble finding him. Haven't seen him in town for a while. Week, maybe more. Is that unusual? Bit. Pax comes in for coffee most mornings. When he doesn't show for a few days, we notice. Figured maybe he went on vacation or something. I thanked her and followed her directions to County Road 43 GG. Turned out to be a dirt road heading east into open desert. Pax's place was about 5 miles out. A small house with a detached garage, surrounded by nothing but sagebrush and sky. His truck was parked in the driveway. Looked like it hadn't moved in days, covered in dust, spider webs in the wheel wells. I parked and walked up to the front door. Knocked. No answer. Tried the handle. Locked. I walked around the house, peering in windows. Everything looked normal. No signs of struggle, no obvious disturbance. Just a house that had been empty for a while. The garage was unlocked. I opened the side door and stepped inside. Standard stuff. Tools, a workbench, some storage shelves. But then I noticed something odd. One wall of the garage was covered in papers. Articles printed from the internet. Hand-drawn diagrams. Photographs. all related to UFO sightings in the area. I walked closer, studying the wall. Pax had been researching this extensively. There were reports going back decades, all marked with different colored highlighters. Patterns circled, dates cross-referenced, and in the center of it all, a hand-drawn map of the San Luis Valley. Red dots marked locations of sightings. The dots were concentrated in certain areas, near Crestone, around Great Sand Dunes National Park, and heavily concentrated along Route 114 between Saguache and Center, right where my truck had stopped. Pax had known. He'd been studying this phenomenon, had seen the patterns, had known that stretch of highway was a hot spot, and when he'd encountered me that night, he'd known exactly what we were looking at. I found a notebook on the workbench. Pax's handwriting filled page after page. Observations, theories, calculations. I flipped through it, trying to make sense of his notes. Most of it was technical: electromagnetic measurements, temporal displacement calculations, hypotheses about propulsion systems. But toward the end, the entries became more personal, more worried. NOV 10th saw them again last night. 3 orbs, same formation as always. They held position above the house for 17 minutes. Phone wouldn't work the whole time. Lost 40 minutes after they left. Can't keep doing this. NOV 11th. Someone was here. Found footprints in the snow near the garage that weren't mine. No vehicle tracks. How did they get here? Called sheriff, but they said animal prints. I know what animal prints look like. These were human. NOV 12th. Going into town tonight. Need supplies. Maybe I'm being paranoid, but I feel like something's coming. The frequency of sightings has increased every night now. They're getting bolder. Or maybe I'm just noticing more because I'm looking. That was the last entry. November 12th. The night he'd encountered me on Route 114. I kept flipping through the pages looking for anything after that date. Found nothing until the very last page. Different handwriting. Not Pax's. More mechanical, more precise. Subject relocated. Property monitoring continues. Intervention successful. My hands were shaking as I closed the notebook. Subject relocated. Intervention successful. They'd taken him. Whoever they were, the lights, the government, some combination of both, they'd taken Pax, and they'd written it down in his own notebook like they were documenting a specimen. I looked around the garage again with new eyes. This wasn't just Pax's workspace. It was evidence. Evidence that someone had been watching him, studying him, and eventually removing him when he became too much of a problem. Was that my future? Would someone eventually come to my house, go through my things, write "subject relocated" in my notes? I left the garage and was heading back to my truck when I noticed something else. The ground near Pax's front porch showed faint marks in the dust. Circular patterns, each about 2 feet in diameter. 3 of them, arranged in a triangle. Landing marks. They'd been here, recently. Maybe as recently as last night. The lights had come to Pax's property, had landed, had done something. I got in my truck and drove away fast. Didn't stop until I was back on 285, heading north. My mind was racing. Pax was gone, taken or relocated or disappeared. Whatever term you wanted to use, the result was the same. He'd seen too much, investigated too deeply, and now he was gone. And I was following the exact same path. I pulled into a rest area and tried to think logically. I had evidence now. Pax's research, his notes, the landing marks at his property. Proof that something real was happening. The question was, what did I do with it? If I went public, tried to expose what was happening, I'd end up like Pax. That much was clear. But if I ran, if I tried to disappear, would that be enough? Or would they find me anyway? My phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. You were observed at Subject Holleran's property. Unauthorized access documented. Return home immediately. Further investigation ill-advised. I stared at the message. They'd been watching. Even out here, miles from anywhere, they'd been watching. I typed back, "What did you do to him?" The response came immediately. Subject Holleran has been relocated to an observation facility for continued study. Physical condition stable. Will not be released. This is your only warning. Cease investigation. Return to routine. Non-compliance will result in similar relocation. An observation facility. They had packs. They were keeping him somewhere, studying him. And if I kept digging, I'd join him. I looked up at the sky. Clear blue. No clouds. No blue lights. But I knew they were there, watching, waiting to see what I'd do next. I had a choice to make, the same choice the woman from DC had outlined. Accept the monitoring and try to live a normal life, or run and hope they'd lose interest. But now there was a third option, one I hadn't considered before. If they had packs, maybe I could find him. Maybe I could figure out where these observation facilities were. Maybe I could do something about it. It was a stupid idea, probably suicidal. I had no resources, no allies, no way to fight against technology that could stop time and control vehicles from the sky. But I couldn't just leave Pax wherever he was. Couldn't just accept that he'd been taken and do nothing. And I kept thinking about Rick's words. The network. Sunday night at the Desert Rose in Alamosa. 4 days from now. Maybe they'd have answers. Maybe they'd know something about these observation facilities, about how to find them. I started driving east, not back to Denver, not back home. Just east, toward the plains, putting distance between myself and the valley. As I drove, I started planning. First, I needed information. Real information. Not just forum posts and speculation. I needed to find others who'd experienced what I had. People who'd investigated and survived. The meeting in Alamosa was a start, but I needed more. Second, I needed to understand the technology. If these things could manipulate time and electronics, there had to be limits. Weaknesses. Ways to shield myself. Maybe old technology. Analog systems that couldn't be remotely accessed or controlled. Third, I needed to find that observation facility. They'd been careless telling me Pax was alive. That meant it existed somewhere. Probably somewhere in the San Luis Valley region. Government facility, private installation. Something hidden in the mountains. If it existed, it could be found. I thought about everything I'd learned over the past week. The temporal distortions. The way cameras couldn't capture the lights when they were visible to the naked eye. The mechanical voice that had spoken to me through my phone. The photograph taken from directly above my truck. These weren't just lights in the sky. This was surveillance. Study. Documentation. They were treating us like specimens in some vast experiment, one that had been running for decades. And the government knew. Those agents in suits, the woman from DC, who told me they'd been monitoring this for 70 years. They weren't trying to stop it. They were just documenting it alongside whoever, or whatever, was actually doing it. That meant I couldn't count on official help. If I was going to find Pax, I'd have to do it alone, or with whatever help I could get from Rick's network. My phone buzzed. Another message from that unknown number, the one that had warned me about going to Pax's property. Deviation detected. Subject Decker exhibiting non-compliance pattern. Recommendation. Immediate intervention. Authorization pending. I stared at the message. They were talking about me like I was a problem to be solved. An anomaly in their system that needed correction. Well, maybe I was. I pulled over at a gas station somewhere in eastern Colorado. Flat plains stretched in every direction, nothing but wheat fields and sky. I went inside, bought another burner phone, and a prepaid SIM card with cash. Then I went back to my truck and made a decision. I took my regular phone, the one they'd been using to track me and send messages, and turned it on one last time. Typed out a response to their message. You want compliance? Here's my compliance. I know you have Pax Holleran. I know you're holding him in an observation facility, and I'm coming to find him. You can try to stop me, but I'm done being afraid. I'm done staying quiet. Do whatever you're going to do. I hit send, watched the message go through. Then I got out of my truck, walked to the edge of the parking lot, and threw the phone as hard as I could into the wheat field. Let them track that. It was insane. I knew it was insane, but what was the alternative? Spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder? Waiting for the night they decided I knew too much? No, I'd rather fight, even if the odds were impossible. My phone buzzed again. Another message. Your decision has been noted. Monitoring escalated. Intervention authorized if necessary. This is your final opportunity to comply. I looked at the message for a long moment. Then I turned off my phone, removed the SIM card, and threw both pieces out the window. I was done complying. Whatever happened next, I'd face it on my terms. The lights would come back. I knew they would. But next time I'd be ready. Next time I'd have answers instead of questions. I kept driving into the sunset, leaving Colorado behind, the blue lights somewhere overhead watching my every move. But I was watching too now, and this wasn't over. Not by a long shot.